New allegations in the BBC presenter scandal with claims of abusive messages and lockdown rule breaking.
A very good morning to you. Welcome to the programme at 6 o'clock on Wednesday, the 12th of July. You're watching and listening to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Thank you for your company. Leading our news on this Wednesday morning, the suspended BBC presenter is facing a series of new revelations as it's alleged he sent abusive messages to someone on a dating app and broke COVID restrictions to meet with another young person in February 2 years ago.
Well, this comes as the BBC presenter Jeremy Vine has called on the unnamed host to come forward to protect innocent colleagues at the corporation.
Volodymyr Zelensky has said it's absurd that NATO won't set a time frame for Ukraine joining the group ahead of a meeting with President Biden today. It comes as G7 leaders prepare to announce a long-term security deal for Ukraine.
Mortgage payers grappling with the most expensive home loans in 15 years should prepare for even higher borrowing costs over the coming months, according to the International Monetary Fund.
Ukrainian tennis star Alina Svitvolona has said her experience of war made her stronger as she celebrated one of the biggest wins of her career against the world's number one, Iga Swiatek. Paul Coit will be here with all the sports news.
Yeah, morning, Eamonn. I mean, she is unbelievable. And if she keeps playing the way she is, then the chances are she's not going to be able to see Harry Styles play live in concert. But then again, you win some and you lose some.
That's a whole other story.
It is.
And will you need your umbrella today? We'll have your latest weather for you.
Good morning. Heavy showers in the forecast once again today. Find out exactly where they'll be in the forecast later on with me.
OK, the unnamed BBC presenter continues to dominate the news, and this morning they are facing a trio of further allegations. The Sun newspaper reporting the host broke lockdown rules to meet a 23-year-old at a time when it was illegal to mix with people outside of your own household.
And the Sun is also carrying claims that the suspended presenter sent messages to a 17-year-old that included heart emojis and kisses, described as creepy.
Well, it follows new allegations from the BBC that the unnamed host sent abusive messages to a young person on a dating app after they hinted they would name him. We're going to speak to David Keithley. David is a former BBC News producer. Good morning to you, sir. OK?
Good morning to you both.
Good, yeah. David, the new revelations overnight, more people involved in this, more message, the plot thickens.
Indeed it does, yes, and one wonders where this is going to end. But I think the key thing here is that we need to know more about what actually happened, and we need to know what the police are going to do. We need to know what the intentions of the presenter are, as Jeremy Vine has, as you say in your headlines, has called for whoever it is to come clean and say what exactly happened.
And, you know, how sustainable is this hiatus that has been imposed by the police, asking the BBC to pause their investigation while they do exactly as you say and try to collect the facts in what they're describing as an assessment, not an investigation?
I don't think it is sustainable for very long at all, because, of course, we're living in an age where information does get out, irrespective of what people feel about or what the rules are about issues such as privacy. And this is engulfing the BBC in a massive way now, in a way that's damaging the reputation of presenters who are not in the frame, as it were. Somehow the BBC has got to get its act together in a way that it doesn't seem to be doing yet. It took nearly 6 weeks for them to start this investigation. They were aware of this back in May. They didn't do anything. Whatever they were doing was in the BBC's own pace. And it just shows that their complaints procedure, I think, is not good enough on many levels. And I think Tim Davie, the Director General, hasn't, in its statement yesterday, hasn't really fully grasped yet the full importance of this.
Yeah, there were things there, David. I mean, when you think back to your time as a producer and the people you've looked after in that time and been responsible for and who've worked under you, and Davey saying yesterday, well, of course, when an allegation comes in about a presenter, of course, you don't immediately go to the presenter and say, there's been this allegation about you. Now, if this was me, if this came in about me, I would be furious if I did not know that somebody was making an allegation about me. You would want to know either to nip it in the bud straight away or to do something about it. But for Davey to say, well, this is sort of natural process, that we don't inform the presenters straight away. What do you think about that?
As I flagged earlier, I think it's just not good enough in the circumstances. It's not giving the urgency of the modern media. It's not recognizing the urgency and the speed with which the modern media works. Of course, and I said this earlier, but of course, this has got to be investigated properly. We can't have kangaroo courts and so on. But at the same time, the BBC needs to see that what's happening here is reputational damage at a very fundamental level. And they have, of course, got a track record of not being quick enough to investigate things. The Jimmy Savile affair, the Cliff Richard, the Martin Bashir with the Princess Di interview, all those showed that the BBC proceeds at its own pace, in its own way, because it's judge and jury in its own complaints process. And it's blinded by the fact that because it is stuck in due process, that things are happening out there in the real world to real people. And this has got to be properly addressed.
Well, in the real world, we have Jeremy Vine saying that this presenter should identify himself, he should come forward. What's your view on that?
Obviously, an individual has got to make his own decisions, but at the same time, this has now reached such levels that I think the presenter involved has got to look very carefully at what's happening to other people, as well as to him or whoever it is, and make a judgment accordingly.
It's interesting, though, you talk about the BBC's track record. We mustn't forget Paul Gambaccini and, as you mentioned, Cliff Richard. And I suppose the BBC could argue, when we heard yesterday from the alleged victim, who was actually quashing the Sun's original story that anything illegal had happened, it does make you think, hang on, we've got to take time, make sure the facts are established, and it kind of adds credence to that. But obviously these new allegations then have come to light as the story seems to take on a nature of its own. Possibly the only law-breaking so far as we can see it could be this lockdown breaking of the rules.
Yeah, of course. And we mustn't jump to conclusions. Because there are allegations, it doesn't mean they're true. But at the same time, what appears to be happening with the numbers of people coming forward now is that there does appear to be more substance to this than warrants just let's wait and see. And I recognise fully that the accusations are wrong against the wrong people, obviously are very damaging. And that was tested very much in the Cliff Richard affair about 5-6 years back. But it is now out of control, and something needs doing which recognises that.
Just lastly, Ofcom have said the board of BBC trusts needs to take full responsibility for this. What does that look like, do you think?
Full responsibility means acting now very quickly indeed, making this an absolute priority. It means talking to everyone involved. And of course, you can't force anybody to take a particular stance, but it's got to be the number one priority in the BBC's agenda at the moment.
Whatever happens, David, is this presenter's career over, do you think?
Very hard to say, because it depends ultimately on whether what's being alleged is true. And as we all know, we don't know whether it is true or not yet. So that has to be the case. But absolutely, in the frame here is the BBC's complaints procedure, which is not good enough, and they need to recognise that something. They need to take steps now which recognise the full urgency of this situation.
David Keeley, really appreciate your take on things. David is a former BBC News presenter. We've got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed.
Now, the US president will hold talks with his Ukrainian counterpart, Volodymyr Zelensky, at the NATO summit in Lithuania today. OK, this following strong words from Zelensky calling the decision for the alliance not to set a time frame for Ukraine joining the group unprecedented and absurd. It comes as G7 leaders are preparing to announce a long-term security arrangement with Ukraine, described as an Israel-style deal. Let's speak to our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, who is in Lithuania for us this morning. Good morning to you. Look, we saw an angry outburst on social media from Zelensky about the sort of vagueness of this agreement that seems to be coming from Vilnius. And today, possibly a bit more hope in terms of this G7 agreement.
Yeah, very good morning, Isabel. As you say, a very angry Volodymyr Zelensky yesterday, travelling here to the NATO summit, making it clear that he thought that the communique, the agreement amongst NATO leaders, if you like, around the membership of Ukraine to NATO simply was not good enough, absurd, as you say. He called it. His concern fundamentally is that he fears that in any future negotiation, if there is going to be peace talks between Russia and Ukraine, that ultimately NATO membership will be on the table, that if Vladimir Putin says he wants Ukraine not to be allowed to join NATO, that could be well negotiated away. That's why he wants to join as soon as possible. As for NATO, though, they're also concerned about escalation. They point out that it is impossible for Ukraine to join NATO as it is in a live act of war. Doing so would escalate into a full war between NATO and Russia. Both the President of the United States, Joe Biden, and our Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, are due to go face-to-face with Vladimir Zelensky today. It could be a very interesting meeting indeed, not least of all because Vladimir Zelensky says that he's going to talk freely about his views on all of this. There is some good news for Ukraine, though, as you say, with that communique from the G7. It's been branded by the Prime Minister as potentially returning peace to Europe. It's an unprecedented agreement with so many countries committing to helping to contribute to Ukraine's defence needs in terms of military capability and training. The Prime Minister, speaking overnight, said that as Ukraine makes strategic progress in its counter-offensive and the degradation of Russian forces, this will help protect Ukraine for the long term and will send a strong signal to President Putin. So no doubt there have been divisions. Those meetings today could well be awkward, but this is an unprecedented agreement from the G7. There's little sign, I think, that NATO and the Western alliance are going to abandon Ukraine anytime soon.
OK, Darren, thank you very much.
We can also speak to the former head of counter-terrorism at the Ministry of Defence, Major General Chip Chapman. Chip, good morning to you. Good to see you. What do you think about Ukraine's call, the legitimacy of that call to be made a NATO member? And if so, when? They want it now. Can you understand the other countries or the objections which says, no, not at the moment?
Yeah, I can. So the first thing to say is that Article 10 of the founding agreement in NATO says that there's an open door policy, and that door is still open for Ukraine. But we were never going to go to war for Ukraine in 2014 when Russia annexed Crimea, and we're not going to go to war on behalf of Ukraine in 2023, the year after the invasion. So it is quite right that there's a conditions-based element to this, that Ukraine should join NATO, not a time-based element, because the time-based element would lead to that absurdity that you would incur Article 5, an attack on one is an attack on all, if Ukraine were to come into the NATO alliance prematurely. But they have said that the military action plan, which is the normal way of going into NATO, will be circumvented when the conditions are correct. That is actually ongoing at the moment, for example, for Bosnia and Herzegovina, which will become the 33rd member of NATO, because one of the outputs really of the Vilnius conference is that Sweden look like they're going to now join, and that will be a vote in the Turkish parliament, which was the last sort of can't join refusnik.
And I suppose watching all of this with interest, of course, will be Moscow. And, you know, they'll be pleased probably, won't they, to see that Zelensky was angry yesterday and to see that slight awkwardness between President Biden and President Zelensky when they meet today.
I don't think they will, because one of the key things in the communique were paragraphs 7 and 8. And what that said, and this is from all the 31 nations, is that the NATO countries will never sign up to the illegal annexation of Crimea or any of the parts that Russia has done, and that Russia should leave Ukraine with all its troops. Now, if you take that from a Moscow perspective, the notion that either land for peace or a frozen peace will mean that NATO countries will concede to any demands of that just isn't in the ballpark. So from that perspective, those aspects of the communique are a very strong message to Russia. So I don't think we should take that as a sort of schism between any of the NATO nations. For me, it was a very, very strong message indeed.
What about Prime Minister Rishi Sunak avoiding a row over the use of cluster bombs? Do you think that was clever politics, or do you think that was showing weakness?
Well, I think he had to do it for the simple reason that the UK is a signatory to the 2008 Cluster Munitions Convention. And if you're a signatory to that, you cannot either give them, we don't have them, nor should you give succour to those who have them and give them. So in terms of the international law, he had to do that. Now, that doesn't mean that probably tacitly he wouldn't support it, because the reason in military terms that they were given the cluster munitions is that they need more artillery, and there are more cluster munitions in the inventories of the US than there are non-cluster munitions. So it's a pragmatic military decision. It might be morally distasteful, but it is not illegal from either an American perspective or a perspective of sustaining Ukraine in the fight.
OK. Major General Chip Chapman, thank you. We'll leave it there. Chip is the former head of counter-terrorism at the Ministry of Defence, and the time is 6:17. Now, do you know, you and I, we sit and talk, and you often would imply that men, maybe a particular man, might embellish stories. Like, you don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. And
As in, I object to that.
Well, you would find that odd. I mean, you're not an embellisher.
I'm not an embellisher, no. Yeah.
So men who are highly entertaining folks will embellish a story just for the comical effect, whereas women are more boring and don't do things like that.
I just prefer to stick to the facts.
Well, here's a survey. Now, tell me if you can identify this, that men tend to overstate how good their holiday was. They overstate their salary. They overstate their cooking prowess, their seniority in work, and so it goes on. They overstate how good they are at running, swimming, or cycling, how many times they get chatted up, how many partners they have had. I tend to play things like that down because it's embarrassing, but...
Once you're not fibbing. I'm joking.
What's what?
Nothing.
Were you being funny?
I was actually. Yeah, I was being funny, but we're just glossing over it. But it is funny. It's a gender divide, and I definitely think... Well, I don't know, actually. I do have one of my best friends, a girlfriend. She can't tell us... I mean, even things that aren't funny, she just cannot tell the truth. It's like a compulsion.
But you think she's entertaining?
I think she's just aggrandising. Everything has to be bigger and better than it is. Even if what she was telling me was really interesting on its own, she just can't help it.
But do you think she's doing that to inflate her own importance, or is she just doing it to be slightly ridiculous?
I think she was just born like that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do men exaggerate things? By and large, are you guilty of that, folks? Are you just more entertaining than most women are? Are women incapable of telling a funny story, making a...
Hang on, just because... I object to that. I like the truth. I really believe in telling the truth. I can't stand lies. I love funny stories. I don't mind nonsense stories.
But in fairness, Isabel, you can... You know, you can be on the dull side.
I'm much more serious character,
do you not
probably.
think that if you told a little fibby, little porky
every now and then,
every now and again, be more like a man, and
it's the first time you've ever said that.
People would find you more amusing and more engaging as a result.
Maybe, but you know,
you don't
it just
care.
Doesn't bother me. Yeah.
Doesn't bother.
Yeah.
Anyway,
would you like me to lie to you in the morning?
Is there a song about that?
Tell me lies, tell me sweet lies.
Yes, yes, and that was Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah. That's why I can't sing. Don't make me sing.
Yeah, that's very good. Do fibs raise a smile? Let us know this morning. GBViews at gbnews.com, or you can tweet at GBNews with the time now at 6:20, and that's no lie.
And these are your headlines. A 15-year-old schoolboy will appear in court this morning accused of attempted wounding and possession of a bladed article after a teacher was stabbed in Gloucestershire. Maths teacher Jamie Sansom suffered a wound in a corridor at Tewkesbury Academy at just after 9 o'clock on Monday.
Environmental regulators will be able to charge polluters unlimited penalties for causing damage, the Department for the Environment has confirmed. The government says the current limit of £250,000 is to be scrapped following a consultation which has widespread public support.
A first edition copy of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit has sold for over £10,000 after being discovered by chance in a Scottish charity shop. The rare copy of the famous book, which follows the adventures of Bilbo Baggins, was found by a manager at the Cancer Research UK Superstore in Dundee.
Have you ever read The Hobbit?
My dad read it to me when I was a child.
Do you remember
Bedtime
it?
story. I remember it going on for months. It wasn't my favourite. I preferred The Borrowers and Little House on the Prairie and all those ones.
Do you know, I go to a restaurant near where I live, and it's like a scene from The Borrowers. The roof is so low it touches your head, and you feel like as if you're really big.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Sounds like a theme restaurant.
perception has changed in that. No, I haven't read The Hobbit. Is there a Hobbit film?
Yeah.
Is there?
Yeah.
Who stars in that?
Martin Freeman.
Oh, is that a bit like Lord of the Rings and all that?
It's all very Lord of the Ringsy, yeah. Yeah. It's good, The Hobbit. It's good, but it's long. That's my memory. Went on a long time.
Well, I haven't indulged in that yet. So £10,000 for a first edition of the Hobbit book by Tolkien. OK, the forecast. Let's go to Greg Dewhurst, and he'll tell you what way it's looking on this Wednesday.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. The day ahead is a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Some of these will be heavy at times and temperatures near average for the time of year. To the best of the sunshine first thing this morning across southeast England, but showers quickly spreading to all areas as we move through the day. Some of the showers could be heavy at times, the risk of some hail and thunder, particularly across northern England into Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland as well. There will be some parts that stay dry all day, but I expect most places will catch a shower. Feeling quite cool where we have a keen breeze around the coast, temperatures in the high teens to low 20s, perhaps 23 or 24 as a maximum temperature towards the far southeast. Through into the evening time, further showers across many areas, though they tend to become more well scattered as we head into the early hours, allowing for clearer spells to develop. But just notice there will be still some showers that carry on through the night. In terms of temperatures, generally a little lower than they have been, 13 or 14 to start Thursday morning. So bright start for many, but scattered showers from the word go. Some of them will be heavy at times, and through the day, a mixture of sunny spells and showers. Showers hopefully less frequent, less heavy compared to the last few days, but some of them could be on the sharp side at times. Quite a bit of Wales, the Midlands could stay dry all day. Showers generally further north and further south across the UK. In the best of the sunshine, temperatures again up into the low 20s, a little cooler around the coasts.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now next, as Ukrainian Elena Svitolina triumphs over top seed Iga Swiatek at Wimbledon, Paul Coit will bring us all the big sports stories in just a
What's it
moment.
got to when you've never heard of anybody who plays in Wimbledon anymore?
It just means you haven't been following it.
No.
Stick it on.
Used
It's
to
a
be you
wonderful
knew what their
soundtrack.
names were. Now look, but anyway, they're very good, very good. That was a good game, great victory for her.
Yes.
Talking about it next.
Nothing wrong with a little porky pie, Eamonn, as long as it's white and brings a smile. Remember that. A joke is not the truth. I thought that was fair enough.
A joke is not the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a joke.
That's the point. You don't have to worry about it. Yeah. Who, me? No, I've been told a million times I don't exaggerate and I don't have an ego. Something my 200-plus ex-girlfriends will undoubtedly confirm. Sounds like a bit of a fib to me.
Do you know what I can't stand? When I am entertaining at dinner or something, you know, and you're telling people a story and you've got,
I'm very good at that.
Gripped.
Yeah, eating out
to the
your hand.
paw of your hand, right? And then I'll say, and then here's what's happened. And then up pipes my wife all the time. That's not what happened.
Yeah, I've heard you tell stories slightly differently from how I experienced them happening before.
What does the Queen say?
Recollections may vary.
May vary.
You and Meghan.
But my story is more entertaining, but she has to spoil it.
Yeah.
She has to say, no. So what purpose is that serving? Let's kill all the conversation. Let's make the whole place very dull. Let's make people want to slit their wrists, basically. But anyway, or have me vitalise everything.
Eamonn, your counterpart, Isabel, could tell a few stories about you, and I bet they'd be entertaining.
Could you?
I could.
Could you?
I could tell a few stories about
Why are you laughing?
Well, because I could. I mean, I don't know where to start. I could write a book about funny things.
And you wouldn't even be
I
exaggerating
really wouldn't be exaggerating.
about all that. So there we go. Still to come on the programme this morning, 6:45. What are we doing?
We're hearing from the council that represents the area around RAF Scampton. They're returning to the High Court today in a bid to try and stop thousands of asylum seekers being housed at the base.
So many of you are outraged by this story, so we're going to give you those details in 20 minutes' time. 8:20 this morning, the International Monetary Fund warns that if you're a homeowner, you're going to face more pain. Rates have hit a 15-year high, and we're going to be asking the government what they're doing to help you if you are a mortgage holder. We'll also speak to the Shadow Housing Secretary, Lisa Nandy, this morning. Get in touch if you've got a point to put, gbviews@gbnews.com.
Or you can tweet at you.
Back pages, let's see how they stack up on this Wednesday. The Star, victors out of your league. Premier League teams have been told only Paris Saint-Germain can afford the £170 million rated Victor Osimhen. What does that say? Moses can't say no. What does that even mean? Anyway, that's in the Sun today. He plays for Brighton, and he wants a big money move to Chelsea despite the Seagulls trying to keep him. And finally, the Express, Svitolina delivers hope to Ukraine. She beat top seed Iga Swiatek to reach the Wimbledon, wasn't final, it was a semi-final, wasn't it?
Yeah, to reach semi-final.
People that write this stuff, right? Absolutely.
By the way, I've got the Caicedo thing. I didn't get that either. I'm Moyes', his name is Caicedo, and that is I'm Moyes' can't say no.
Oh, well done.
It took me about 30 seconds to try and work it out.
You need to know
because he said that he can't say no to Chelsea because of the amount of money, so Caicedo can't say no.
Got it.
Be very careful what you're saying there.
Really?
Teeter's on the brink, that one.
It does.
So what about Elena then? Yesterday.
Oh, Elena Svitolina. I think she's now everybody's favourite tennis player of Ukraine, and there was the whole non-shaking hands situation, and everybody's behind her. She played Iga Swiatek yesterday, and Iga is the world #1. Never had a success at Wimbledon, but it was very nice because it was a great game. But also, Elena said afterwards how great Iga Swiatek had been with her and the whole Ukrainian situation and how much support she'd given her. She is just a terrific tennis player, and I think that is the thing that's going to capture everybody's hearts if she actually does manage to win. I've got another fact for you.
Yeah?
She'll be the second mother in 100 years to win the Wimbledon title.
But that's incredible. Not only the second mother, but she only gave birth 3 months ago.
9.
9.
It was 9.
Okay.
It was 2 weeks ago. It was unbelievable. She's come out and played. Yeah, it was 9 months. But even so,
isn't it?
Well, there's something.
That's still pretty good going, isn't it?
Serena Williams.
Sorry?
Who was the other mother?
It was Yvonne Corley. Back in 1980, Yvonne Goolagong. Yvonne Goolagong.
Do you remember
Sounds like a
Yvonne
song.
Goolagong?
Yvonne Goolagong.
Hey, listen.
She then got married, so her name would be Corley.
Yvonne Corley, yeah.
Oh, right, got you.
She was fantastic. Lost it, and
Sounds
she beat. I believe she beat Chris Evert in the final. And the reason I know this is that at home, you know what? And I may even bring this in. I found a scrapbook. In my loft of Wimbledon that I did in 1980, and I put all the cuts in there, little pictures.
So you did
and
this
it was
as a civilian, not as a journalist.
Oh yeah, I was young. I was a child, so I mean, it was truly a civilian work.
How young? Because I can't get my kids into it, and I keep forcing them, and they're just sitting there going, "Oh, can I have the remote back?" And I'm like, "This is the best quality tennis."
Yeah.
That's amazing. They're like, what are those ball boys doing?
It was.
You'd pay money now to see Svitolina.
I did see Svitolina on one of the outside courts earlier last week. She wasn't on the inside courts, but we talk about Harry Styles. He's obviously been a bit impressed by her.
Well, yeah, because she wanted to see. This is what she'd said all along: is that she really wanted to go and see Harry Styles, and she had to cancel going to see one of his gigs.
Yes.
Because she was going well. So then Harry then tweeted back and said, "You're welcome to. I've got 4 left, and you're welcome to anywhere." So Barcelona is tonight. So obviously that's out the window now because she's won. Then she's got Harry Styles has got Lisbon on the 18th. So should she win the semi-final, that's going to be out the window. And then the last one is Regilio Emilia, which is on the 22nd. So should she win the final, there's a chance she could get to... I can't believe I've even looked up the...
I love that you've looked this up. Well done, you.
It's just ridiculous. I'm taking it far too seriously. But it could be Aryna Sabalenka in the final, who's Belarusian. And, of course, we know what the situation is like there. Can you imagine what the final is going to be like? Someone from Belarus against a Ukrainian tennis player. I think it's going to be fireworks, but it will be terrific. So we're looking forward to it.
So who's Victor Osimhen? He's rated at 170 million quid. And apparently there's only one team that can afford him, PSG.
Yeah, well, he plays at Napoli, Nigerian striker. Everybody been talking about him, and Manchester United were very interested as well when Harry Kane seemed to be not available. But it's Napoli that are saying that Manchester United and Chelsea won't be able to afford him. I mean, this is ridiculous. Saying that only PSG can afford him £170 million. He's only 21, 22 years old. He's a good striker, but is he 170 million? Surely is insane. It's the same at Moises Caicedo.
Did we get any advance on that Bayern Munich bid of 60 million for Harry Kane?
Still nothing. I think they've gone as far as 70, but...
You don't think it's going to happen?
No. I mean, it's just an insult to be able to throw that money in. If you're going to make a bid, make a proper bid. There's no point throwing in, how about 70 million? How about 75? This is not Holmes under the hammer here. This is Harry Kane up for sale, the best striker there is in the world. So that's where that is at the moment.
Right, so in the run-up to the next Ashes series at Old Trafford next week, what's happening?
Well, Johnny Bairstow is the questionable player. Now, he's obviously come back from injury, and everybody knows what a great player Johnny Bairstow is, and he's a wicket-keeper, but the thing is, he's dropped some catches, he hasn't scored well, so the question is it worth keeping him now, although they won the last test, and keep him? And the answer is yes, so he's going to be in the squad. The other wicket-keeper, because you've got wicket-keeper batsman or a batsman wicket-keeper, so do you want a wicket-keeper that's pretty good, he's OK, but he's going to score runs, or a really good wicket-keeper that is more likely to make all the catches, but whether he's going to score runs. Now, that other one is Ben Foakes. So I do have a feeling, though, that not only the fact that with Bazball and the way that they run the England cricket team, it's like there's no fear, don't worry, you're not going to be dropped if it doesn't work out, we're going to stick with you. So then that helps the confidence. But if they had Foakes in the side, then it would be a matter of Stokes, Wokes and Foakes, and I think that would just be confusing for everybody.
Can Ben Foakes intercept Just Stop Oil protesters? Because that has to be a factor.
See, that's a good point. That is a very good point as well. But he drops very little. I mean, the thing is, that was the best catch that Johnny Bairstow made in the whole Test series so far. But it was a crucial one, correct.
From stopping oil to starting oil, look at this in the Star today. 2 Ford Capris used in the professional series. Now, we were talking about things we never got as kids or as young people. But as a 20-year-old... I would have loved to have had a Capri. So we've got a silver Stratus Capri here, and then the gold model version. They're sold as a lot.
Oh, well, you have to buy both.
And they cost a lot.
Go on.
Guess what they're going for?
Well,
so they're
20,
going for
20
auction.
grand each?
Oh, you'd think so, but Silverstone Auctions of Warwickshire is selling them in one lot next month. 230 grand.
Is that for the
I
both?
thought you were going to say... I honestly thought you were going to say...
What?
What I know.
You were going to say
£230, because no one would want them.
That's funny too. That's
Thank
funny.
you.
That's another good one. That's good. So actually, you're thinking that...
You couldn't pay me to have one of those. I don't get it. But
You
I
don't
mean,
get it? No.
I think the name Capri is false advertising. I was imagining something really glamorous and Italian.
But they're phallic, aren't they? Aren't they?
No, I don't think they are.
Capri? You're kidding me.
OK. I'm slightly concerned if you think that is.
That shows true masculinity to drive around in a Capri with your elbow out the window, blurring out Kiki D as loud as you can.
My
Kiki D.
gosh, you too.
Don't go breaking my heart.
There you go. I couldn't if I do that. Driving like that
silver or
through
gold?
Romford Market.
Silver or gold?
Silver. You know what? You know, if I'm going with a Capri, I'm going with the gold. I'm going all in.
Yeah, I'd
I'm going all in.
fancy the
Why are
silver.
they so expensive, Eamonn, by the way?
I think because they're in the professionals.
Is it the actual ones in the professionals? Bodie and Doyle's cars?
I mean, everything's new about them. The tyres, the wheels, everything.
Listen, I got to ask you this, and this is I went to one of these car shows, you know, where they do the Goodwood Festival of Speed and one at Goodwood, and I was speaking to an expert, and he said this car is worth £10 million. And I said, well, 10 million? And he said, yeah, but it's... And I said, well, how is it in such good condition? He said, well, it's had a new bumper, it's had new wheels, it's had this... But, yeah, it's the fact that it's still the same car.
Authentic.
Yeah, and I'm saying it's like Trigger's broom. You know, it's had different heads and it's had different handles. How is it still the same car? And he goes, well, it is the same car. And I said, well, it's not the same car.
Isabel, that's an example of a man embellishing a story there as well.
Yeah, selling it.
Selling it. Thanks,
Listen,
my friend.
I would never lie.
See you again later.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed.
Right, stay with us. We're talking about this crisis with mortgages and what can be done to help homeowners. This is in the papers with Sean McDonald and Emily Carver. It's time to go through the papers. Let's take a look at the front of those for you this morning. Here's the Daily Express.
Leading with claims the unnamed BBC presenter sent abusive messages to this young person. And we're going to ask in the newspaper review very shortly, if you were threatened to be outed or exposed, maybe exposed is the wrong word to use in this case, but would you not be abusive if someone was going to name you?
I think the key is you use the word threatened. The person in question was being threatened. So, you know, I think the whole thing is rather unedifying. This person clearly was frightened by what was said to them, but presumably so was the presenter. And there's no suggestion of illegality. It was just a dating app.
What you're saying is it's a bit much to be saying, he acted unreasonable, he said.
I think a lot of people have unpleasant experiences on dating apps. I don't know if it needs to bring down the BBC. In this particular instance. I think it's a bit of a flimsy story, that one.
Here's the Daily Mail. It says campaigners believe China sent a spy to infiltrate a House of Commons briefing.
The Guardian says Jeremy Hunt's told ministers there's no extra cash to give to public sector workers who want a pay rise.
And joining us to go through the papers this morning, we welcome Sean MacDonald and we welcome Emily Carver, both of them. And Emily, let's begin with the unnamed BBC presenter who everybody knows who it is. And, yeah, it is strange. I actually got a text last night from someone, a professional person, who said to me, "Who is it? Who is it?"
Get with the programme.
And I'm thinking, what? You don't know who it is?
How many texts have you had asking if you know?
So many.
I think I've had about 13.
I don't want to go down the whole route of saying things that are inappropriate, but I got it straight away because these are stories that circulate in the industry that I'd heard long ago. And I sent a text to someone who was able to confirm, said, "Is it this person?" They said, "Yeah." But it's everywhere.
I didn't get it straight away at all.
Yeah,
It really surprised me. But it does surprise me now by this stage. Today is Wednesday. Saturday when people were asking me, Sunday when people were asking me, I wasn't sharing any names or speculating. But then when it became beyond reasonable doubt, things changed. So, Emily, what's your take on this?
I was just going to say, as we hand to you, I mean, you've got the Express headline there, but I actually think we should go with the Sun because they've got 2 new allegations. There's a total, by the way, it's hard to keep up, but 3 new allegations across all of the papers.
Yes, this is the latest, which the other papers haven't got hold of.
Total of 4, because the one that the Sun first broke has subsequently been sort of kiboshed, but the Sun have come out with 2 new ones this morning and the Express has another.
Yes, so the Sun broke the first allegation, which was the explicit photos, which was an allegation by the family of a young person. And then we've got the Sun leading on. Then we had the BBC on another allegation, and now we've got the Sun back again with yet another. And this is that apparently the BBC presenter broke lockdown rules to meet another young person. Money was exchanged too. Apparently there was cash payments to this young person. They met. Apparently there was a lot of persistent behaviour, which one could say is totally inappropriate. It's difficult to give a view on all of this, besides from the fact that I think it probably is time that the presenter in question named himself, because we've got to this absurd situation where the name is all around, all over social media. You've got people like Jeremy Vine and other BBC presenters saying, "It's not me, you need to name yourself." But, of course, legally, he does not have to. I imagine he's lawyered up to the hilt by now and will be assessing his options. But it all seems rather sordid. People have been saying, oh, you know, is this over the top? Should we be making such judgments? People have relationships that don't work out, as Isabel said. You know, many people on dating apps have awkward encounters. Whether there's public interest, I would say there probably is, but it's very difficult to see. I think it all just hinges, surely, on whether there's been any illegality. And obviously the first allegations was involving somebody disseminating images under the age of 18. Clearly unacceptable. But, you know, we can't be offended by the age gap. We can't be offended by the fact this person could be in a relationship we don't know. You know, that's none of our business, surely. It has to be about whether they've broken lockdown rules or broken the law. And if that isn't the case, then, you know... Well, I don't know, because...
What has it got to do with the BBC as well? You could ask.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all the different
questions. If the presenter in question was using his position, which it seems likely from the exchanges, using that to pressure young people into relationships or into meeting, perhaps that is something for the BBC to take.
Do you think that is evident from the messages? Because, I mean, we've heard this person coming out saying I was sent abusive messages, but was that not in response to being threatened?
Well, I mean, on the day of the visit, he sent a youngster a present of £200, one of 3 payments made to a PayPal account, the others for £200 and £250. He gave me cash 3 times. He started to make me feel like he owned me because he was giving me money. He was always talking about his career and was very arrogant. Clear power imbalance. Yes, there are often power imbalances in relationships and you can't micromanage that. But I think the money makes it seem rather sordid. We don't know exactly what's going on. But then there's the COVID element too, which brings us back to all of that.
Well, it's the whole Philip Schofield phrase now, ill-advised but not illegal. I mean, could it all boil down to that? Who knows?
We could be straying into illegality because obviously the age of consent is 16, as we know, and I feel like there may be some discrepancy in the law, as we're saying about possession pictures of under-18s. But then when there's money changing hands frequently, I think it was reported in a nutshell, £650 in exchange for a cup of tea. That starts to become really, really weird when you take into consideration status, role, age, standing, and with somebody of that age, it becomes very murky. And I think, the BBC probably do have questions to answer if it was reported to them and nothing was seemingly done about it.
You could also say that there may well be more people that come out and give their stories to the Sun, whether it becomes a bit of a witch hunt. People have many motivations, don't they, for going to the press. And, as you say, is any of it illegal? We don't know yet.
Yeah, we don't know yet. One to watch. I think this story isn't going anywhere for a while anyway.
Sean, let's go to the Telegraph. If people have cats, they may be worried here. There is a virus, a killer virus, heading to the UK regarding cats.
So I didn't realise this. Cyprus is the first country on earth or the earliest documentation of the domestication of cats. They're very fond of them. There's a lot of them. But there's a concern that a virus has killed 300,000 strays. I know, it's quite sad. And it seems to affect kittens and pretty serious COVID-type symptoms, such as, I think, a swelling, increased hostility, energy loss, fever. There's sort of anecdotal evidence that it may have reached Turkey, Lebanon, maybe Israel, and there is a risk. It doesn't affect humans. I mean, you would hope that it wouldn't then go on to, as we obviously saw with COVID, but there's a concern that it could make its way to the UK, and it poses a real risk to domestic animals. Quite a worrying one, to be honest.
Yeah, that's really, really scary. In Britain, we really love our cats. A lot of these places don't necessarily love their cats like we do. But I think people would be more prepared to go into lockdown again to protect their cats.
I know, but 300,000 since January.
That's an absurd amount.
Feline coronavirus.
I'm not particularly a cat person. I wouldn't wish any ill to a cat or anything. But what do you get? I mean, it's obvious the love and adoration a dog gives its owner.
I think it's more with a dog as a cat lover. I mean, I don't dislike dogs, but you always kind of think, well, they're just a bit dim and they're just coming because you're feeding them. With a cat, you feel like they don't need you. And, quite often, if they come to you, it's a mega compliment.
Are you fighting for a cat's attention then, are you?
No, it's love. It's once you've got a cat that you've got to, as your pet, that cat and you have a deep love, trust me, right in your face.
I think cats are probably more like humans in the sense that their personalities and demeanour can be very varied, whereas a dog is a dog. And dogs are just brand new, like dogs are sound. But I think cats are more...
You have to earn it.
Yeah,
cats are for the thinking person.
Some cats are really friendly, some are not so nice.
My dog is lovely, but it's nice but dim. I do agree that. Now, Emily, I'll ask you both this. This is in the Mirror, page 3. It says women sleep more than men. I wouldn't disagree with that.
I definitely need more sleep than my hubby.
Yeah?
It's actually true. Yes. I read somewhere else that women need about an hour or so's more sleep. So this makes sense that they are having more sleep because of our hormones and things.
Oh, don't blame the hormones. I thought you were going to say it's because we multitask.
No, apparently it is. Our biology means that we need more sleep in order to replenish because our bodies do so much more than yours.
I'm literally going to screenshot this and send this to my husband every Saturday morning.
We need an hour more sleep.
I'm like, please, just let me have another hour.
Although I never get 8. So that would be nice.
My experience of women through the years is that they...
Eamonn.
No, I'm saying when it comes to sleep, they look upon bed, Sean, as a different thing than men. I think, oh, yeah, it's 11 o'clock, I better go to bed. Oh, I'm just dying for my bed. I love my bed. Oh,
yeah,
my bed.
I see it just as a necessary task that you have to get to sleep. But yeah, I've never understood that, the sort of adoration on bed.
Yeah, no, my love for my bed is almost parallel to my love for my cat.
I tend to find that because I don't have that, I'll end up just sitting up.
I think what's...
But I never think, oh, I'm desperate to get into bed, so I end up kind of just sitting and watching.
I do say it at 3 in the morning when the alarm goes off. I do think I love my bed.
I really struggle. I don't think I've ever slept the night before a show. I don't know how you...
Really?
But I think my brain is, like, just paranoid.
We struggle on a Sunday night. It's the same thing, but then we get cumulative.
What's difficult is if you and your partner like to go to sleep at very different times. Don't you think?
Is it, Emily?
I think there's a debate. I like to go to bed early.
Is Patrick a night owl, by any chance?
Yes, very much so. I like to get to bed early.
OK, well, you two go off and have 40 winks and be back again.
Together.
Reported
Patrick will be round here.
7:30, the guys will be back again for a second newspaper review. Thank you very much indeed. Cheers. Now, RAF Scampton. Councils are returning to the High Court today in an attempt to prevent illegal migrants from being housed on their doorstep. And I know this is something that resonates with a lot of you.
It involves West Lindsey District Council, that's in Lincolnshire, and also Braintree Council in Essex. They're both trying to challenge a decision to house asylum seekers at former military bases.
Well, our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis, more on this.
For months now, no aircraft has flown in or out of RAF Scampton. But soon, hundreds of asylum seekers could start landing here. Residents like Jason live on the camp's edge. He says government proposals sideline the people living here.
It feels like we don't matter. Like nothing that we've got to say matters at all. Realistically, although they say temporary, I would guess many, many years. We would be the community that essentially picks up the pieces once they've gone.
The Home Office risks being overwhelmed by the backlog of asylum claims. In March, it announced a plan to build temporary accommodation at old military bases to accommodate thousands of migrants. One here at Scampton near Lincoln, another at Wethersfield in Essex. Local councils have hit back, claiming it's the wrong plan in the wrong place. They say that the Home Office is misusing planning legislation. Snap back to the present, West Lindsey and Braintree councils are getting their day in court. The permissions hearing today will determine whether the bigger judicial review can happen. Roger is Scampton's councillor. He says a multi-million-pound deal to develop the old Dambusters RAF base into a heritage attraction is at risk.
It's not about the asylum seekers. Everybody focuses on that to an extent. Not about the asylum seekers, it's about people's jobs, future jobs, the regeneration of everything. It's about whether we have a future ourselves as an estate or we don't have a future, which has happened at other bases. If I wasn't confident, I'd be depressed. You know, I don't want to be depressed.
In a statement, the Home Office said, delivering accommodation on surplus military sites will end the use of expensive hotels to house those arriving in small boats. We continue to work closely with the local authorities to address the local community's concerns.
Nobody's spoken to us about it. They're from the Home Office. No one. And as I said, the only response I've seen from the Home Office is to confirm that they will not speak to us face to face.
The swelling pressure on Britain's asylum system is spilling out across the country. Despite intentions, it's unknown if it will wash through here. Will Hollis, GB News, Scampton.
Look, your views very much welcome, very much appreciated. What you have to say on that, your fears on this one. GBviews at gbnews.com, or you can tweet at GBnews. And also to say today, we're having a wee bit of a car showroom. There's a story of 2 Ford Capris from the Professionals TV series, and they're up for auction in Warwickshire next week. And people are...
I mean, the inbox, you're asking people to email in about RAF Scampton. The inbox is full of pictures of capris and pussycats this morning in relation to that awful story of a sort of COVID cat virus. Anyway, keep them coming in, and we'll try and reflect some of those in the next hour.
Here's your forecast.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. The day ahead is a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Some of these will be heavy at times and temperatures near average for the time of year. To the best of the sunshine first thing this morning across southeast England, but showers quickly spreading to all areas as we move through the day. Some of the showers could be heavy at times, the risk of some hail and thunder, particularly across northern England into Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland as well. There will be some parts that stay dry all day, but I expect most places will catch a shower. Feeling quite cool where we have a keen breeze around the coast, temperatures in the high teens to low 20s, perhaps 23 or 24 as a maximum temperature towards the far southeast. Through into the evening time, further showers across many areas, though they tend to become more well scattered as we head into the early hours, allowing for clearer spells to develop. But just notice there will be still some showers that carry on through the night. In terms of temperatures, generally a little lower than they have been, 13 or 14 to start Thursday morning. So a bright start for many, but scattered showers from the word go. Some of them will be heavy at times, and through the day, a mixture of sunny spells and showers. Showers hopefully less frequent, less heavy compared to the last few days, but some of them could be on the sharp side at times. Quite a bit of Wales, the Midlands could stay dry all day. Showers generally further north and further south across the UK. In the best of the sunshine, temperatures again up into the low 20s, a little cooler around the coasts.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Coming up, we'll have more for you on that BBC presenter scandal as a trio of new allegations have come to light. New allegations in the BBC presenter scandal with claims of abusive messages and lockdown rule breaking.
Hello there, very good morning to you. It is 1 minute past 7. It is Wednesday, the 12th of July. and you're tuned in to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. The suspended BBC presenter is facing a series of new revelations this morning as it's alleged he sent abusive messages to someone on a dating app and broke COVID restrictions to meet with another young person in February 2021.
Now, it comes as BBC presenter Jeremy Vine calls on the unnamed host to come forward to protect innocent colleagues and the corporation itself.
Volodymyr Zelensky said it's absurd that NATO won't set a time frame for Ukraine joining the group ahead of a meeting with President Joe Biden. G7 leaders, meanwhile, will today announce a long-term security deal for the country.
Mortgage payers grappling with the most expensive home loans in 15 years should prepare for even higher borrowing costs. That's according to the International Monetary Fund.
Ukrainian tennis star Alina Svitolina has said her experience of war made her stronger as she celebrated one of the biggest wins of her career against world #1 Iga Swiatek.
And when you need your umbrella today, we have the latest weather update.
Good morning. Heavy showers in the forecast once again today. Find out exactly where they'll be in the forecast later on with me.
Talking about whether you need... No, I know you want to talk news, but I want to talk about things that affect people's lives.
Oh, sorry.
Umbrella. Will you need your umbrella today? I bet you don't know this. Your car, and I know what your car is, there could be a hole in it to deposit an umbrella in the door.
Stop.
Some cars come, like Bentley and Rolls-Royce, with
Not
this...
mine.
No, but other cars have the same hole. But basically, in a Bentley and Rolls-Royce, you open your door and basically you can take out like a sword.
Oh, nice. You sure it's not a cup holder?
No. It's
Sure.
it's like a sheath, you sort of sword you take out, and you have your umbrella in the door.
Very
in the
smart.
door, right?
Wonderful.
But there are a lot of cars,
Yeah.
further down the range, Kias and things, Hyundais and whatever, which have this hole in the door that you can insert your own umbrella and have it in your door.
Why don't you just put it in the boot? Oh, because when you get in and out.
Do you know what you're just asking me, Eamonn? How do you know these things?
How do you know these things?
It's just me.
When were you last in a Kia?
It's just me.
I'd like to see that.
I did see it on Instagram.
There you go.
I did see it on Instagram. Very true. Here is our top story. The unnamed BBC presenter is this morning facing a trio of further allegations. That makes 4 in total. The Sun today reporting that he broke lockdown rules to meet a 23-year-old at a time when it was illegal to mix with people outside of your own household.
Well, The Sun also carries claims that the suspended presenter sent messages to a 17-year-old who was still at school that included heart emojis and kisses, described as creepy.
Now, this follows new allegations from the BBC that the unnamed host sent abusive messages to a young person on a dating app after they hinted they would name him publicly. We're simply asking the question today, does that make these abusive messages or does that make these defensive messages if they meet on this public Tinder forum? Is that what it was?
Whatever it might be. Yeah, they haven't specified, yeah.
No, I'm not frequented with them myself. But basically, and if they then say, oh, I'm going to say who you are and what your public profile is it then abusive to get back and say, please don't do that, or words stronger than that?
Well, earlier we spoke to a former BBC News producer who told us that the broadcaster's complaints procedure simply isn't good enough.
Depends ultimately on whether what's being alleged is true, and as we all know, we don't know whether it is true or not yet. So that has to be the case. But absolutely, in the frame here is the BBC's complaints procedure, which is not good enough. And they need to recognise that something, they need to take steps now which recognise the full urgency of this situation.
Well, let's speak now to the former newspaper editor and media commentator, Neil Wallace. Good morning to you. Look, the story almost looked as though it was losing some momentum yesterday, with the police pausing, asking the BBC to pause their investigations, and the original complainant saying this was all nonsense. But then we wake up this morning to 3 new allegations. This story isn't going anywhere.
Yes, it has a rhythm of its own, doesn't it? And I'm afraid these stories, this type of stories tend to do this. Because what happens is that a story makes the papers, makes TV, and then other people see it. If this is a pattern of behaviour, and that's the importance, I think, of what you're seeing at the moment. What you're seeing is a pattern of how this presenter operates, if you like, in his private life. And it's sort of, the importance is not so much the individual incidents, it's the fact of that pattern that shows that over a long period of time, this is how this person has effectively used their fame, their power, and the money that is generated from all of that to benefit themselves in this way. And I thought there was a very disturbing phrase in the BBC stuff yesterday that sort of symbolised it really, where the young guy was supposedly scared by the power that the individual held. That's sinister. That's part of what this is about. It's a major part of what this is about.
Neil, what I love watching you commentating about these things because, you know, probably because of your job, you're no nonsense, you cut to the point. Let me ask you a direct question then. Should this man identify himself?
Again, very interesting, Eamonn, that Jeremy Vine came out yesterday. I tweeted about this as soon as I saw it. Very significant that Jeremy Vine has, if you like, mutinied. And I think that if you, part of what I do is called reputation management. And if you want to take control of a narrative, then you have to step forward and take control of that narrative. And the only way left for this presenter to do it is to stand up and say, it's me they're talking about. That's not what happened, or these are the circumstances. The idea of sort of skulking away and hiding away behind legal technicalities, I don't think works. And as you said, I've had a few years of dealing with this, and eventually the name will come out.
And Neil, it is almost 2 stories, isn't it? It's one story about the Star and all of the sort of sordidness there, and the other story about the BBC, yet another scandal. Once again, big questions about the way they handled this, particularly the lack of speed.
The more I learn about the way the BBC has handled this, can I just say, I think as soon as Tim Davie got involved, the Director General, I think he has stepped up to the plate. I think he is trying to resolve it. I think that he has got the ability and willingness to tackle it. But until then, it is desperate. What we now know categorically is that these parents, first, we must not forget, we're talking about concerned parents, concerned about their child who they allege has a drug problem. And I note that nobody, the lawyer that has now apparently he has hired or has been hired for him, is denying that side of the story in particular. That the parents first reported that in April. And when they went to the BBC, first of all, wherever this building was, that's what they reported. Now, there may not have been so much detail has now come out. They may not have known, and how many of us do know the technicalities of the BBC complaints procedure. But what happened then, in my opinion, was just completely wrong, and a classic of how a management will bury its head in the sand. They hide behind process before they actually deal with issues. And Eamonn, this must ring sadly true to you.
Let me put this to you. Is it really anything to do with the BBC? Are we not just dealing with, you know, at its kindest, a sad set of circumstances, someone who finds themselves living a lie in life here? And, I mean, people talk about the power this presenter has. I mean, we're presenters. Do you think we've got power over, you know, manipulating people and using people and whatever it is? Sometimes I just think all of this is somewhat overblown. His biggest sin, Neil, and I'll just play devil's advocate with you, is that he's on the telly. That's his biggest sin.
Well, it's certainly the start point of it. You're completely right, Eamonn. But it's a little difficult because we can't reveal what the person's role was as a presenter. But as a presenter, he is difficult to phrase carefully. He is very, very successful and powerful. And as you guys are, obviously, but the point is, with that power comes a responsibility, and it is that combination of issues that make this a running story. And there is an issue, obviously, with this man's private life, but it doesn't stop him coming forward and being open about that and addressing the issue, which is what he should do.
Well, look, listen, you should come back and talk to us again. There's so much more that we can't talk about we can't talk about it yet, and we can't talk about it. Just final point to you, Neil. We can't obviously name the guy, although we all know who it is that we're talking about. Did the name surprise you? Did it? Because you could have knocked me over with a feather, really, because there wasn't a whiff, in my world, there wasn't a whiff of scandal around this man beforehand. Did the name surprise you, or did it not surprise you?
Knocked me sideways.
OK, we'll leave it at that. Neil Wallace, former newspaper editor and regular media commentator. Always good to get your thoughts. Thank you.
Interesting. Not in the slightest. Shows you what world I live in. We think we live in a world where we know everything that's going on and that you know people around you, and that you don't.
But do you know what? There was not a whiff of suspicion, but equally nothing surprises me anymore. You know?
Yeah.
I'm just kind of, I could believe anything of anyone these days.
That's true.
Anyway, should we talk about mortgages? Another cheery subject this morning.
Really interesting. Yeah, let's talk about mortgages.
Do you know what? It's terrible. Payers are grappling with the most expensive home loans in 15 years.
I think it's awful for people, literally, to have their monthly payments double. And you're expected to just get on with this.
Well, you just can't. And 2.4 million people are about to have to renew their mortgages in the next 6 months. It's a huge number of you out there. I'll be very, very worried.
OK. Well, we've got in the studio Greg Marsh. Greg is a household finance expert and he's CEO of... what are you CEO?
Nous for your house.
What is Nous?
Common sense, practical intelligence.
Right, OK.
The irony.
What is the irony of all of this? What is the common sense, Greg, on all of this? Because this is just a car crash waiting to happen.
It's happening.
Yeah.
It's been happening for months.
Yeah.
I mean, just to put the numbers you just shared in context, so if you took a mortgage out, a typical UK household size, you took a mortgage out 2 years ago, and you're having to refinance today, at the end of your 2-year fix, your monthly repayments, this is an average UK household on a mortgage, are going to increase by £500 a month, just shy of that. Yeah. Now, that isn't affordable for most of the people who have these properties without making radical changes to what they're spending money on. And now, there's things you have to spend money on. It's not like electricity's cheap. It's not like food is cheap.
No.
It's not like
you've got to
home
find
insurance and car insurance.
£6,000 a year in savings.
You've got to find six, and either you're going to be spending savings, or you're going to be making radical economisation decisions about not taking a holiday this year, not buying clothes that you need, or all of the above. Now, for many households, therefore, this isn't a sort of a tightening the belt moment. This is a major panic moment.
Yeah.
And it's for 1 in 10 households that over the next 12 months are in this situation, took out mortgages at a time when interest rates were extremely low, are now facing an environment which is actively hostile.
But we're actually going to speak now to the Shadow Secretary of State responsible for levelling up and housing, Lisa Nandy, and then we'll come back to you for some reaction because she wants to talk about mortgages as well this morning. Very good morning to you, Lisa. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, good morning.
I don't know how much you were able to hear about that conversation, but just reflecting on the shocking state, really, of where we are with mortgages and the warning today from the IMF that the pain's only going to get worse.
Yeah, and obviously this is having a huge impact on people who have mortgages. It's having a huge impact on people who aspire to own their own home, who've saved for a long time and have seen those dreams go up in smoke. And it's also having a huge impact on renters as well. It's pushing rents up. So it's not just that mortgages are at a 15-year high and people who are renegotiating are finding that they're hit with an extra hundreds of pounds a month. It's that this is having a knock-on effect right across the board and making a housing crisis that was already a real problem in this country far, far worse.
Yeah. But, you know, we get back, Lisa, to this. We've got a mortgage expert in the studio here, and he was saying on average 6,000 quid a year people are going to have to find, which most people just won't be able to find. But we come back to this plan, or this situation again and again, and I highlight it and I talk about it, and I still don't understand why there's not a governmental commitment to social housing and why we just can't build more private houses as well. Why are we so inept? Are we so broke as a country? Are we so devoid of planning ahead that we can't say part of the problem, and it is a massive problem, is we've got to build not hundreds of houses, not thousands of houses, but tens of thousands of extra homes in this land?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right to point to the long-term impact of this and the longer-term measures that are needed. Rachel Reeves and I are meeting mortgage lenders later today, and we'll be talking about the short-term measures that we need to put in place to make sure people are protected now. But there's no substitute for getting Britain building again. House building is forecast to fall to its lowest level since the Second World War. And if we're going to find a way out of this housing crisis and this economic crisis, we've got to get Britain building again. One of the ways that we've proposed doing that is ending the taboo in the debate around the green belt. At the moment, we've got an absurd situation where the government is passing a piece of legislation in the House of Lords at the moment, it harder through planning reforms to get homes built. We think that instead of declassifying the genuinely green bits of the green belt, we ought to be identifying sites like the disused petrol station in Tottenham that is classified as green belt and was recently turned down for an affordable housing development, and get Britain building the right homes in the right places and put ourselves firmly on the side of the builders, not the blockers, which is, we've been on the wrong side of that now for far too long.
Except it's so, I don't know how that works at the ballot box. I mean, people want Britain to remain a green and pleasant land, and naturally everybody balks at that, whether we want to be condescending and call that NIMBYism. You know, green belts should be protected. If there's a petrol station on a bit of green belt, I would put it to you, we should get rid of the petrol station and make it green. There's plenty of disused buildings across the capital. We drive in every morning and we see all these empty buildings and we think, goodness, just put people in there. Why, you know, tarmac over our lovely green and pleasant land?
Well, because this isn't the green and pleasant land. The green belt, large parts of the green belt aren't green. They don't protect the character of communities, which is what the green belt is supposed to do. And what we've seen instead over the last decade is that steadily the government has been declassifying the genuinely green parts of the green belt because they're the places that developers want to build because they're far more lucrative. And what it means is that in many parts of the country, including my own constituency in Wigan, what we're getting is luxury executive housing, £500,000 homes, when average incomes make those homes far out of reach, especially for young people who then have to move miles away in order to get on the housing ladder. We think that we should take a far more sensible, common sense approach to the planning system, involve communities early, enable development corporations to take ownership of land in order to decide what gets built and where, and end the blockage in the system. We've got developers sitting on banks of land for long periods of time, watching those prices rise while homes go unbuilt. You're absolutely right that we should be bringing empty buildings back into use, but there is no substitute for building houses in this country, and perhaps that is a politically brave decision, but we make no apology for that because there is a crisis in this country. Many people are paying a very heavy price for politicians' failure to tackle it, and we're determined to do it.
Well, Lisa and Andy calls it a crisis. I would have to say it would be very hard to argue against her description. Lisa, can you explain, if you can't, I've got a definition in front of me here, what a sofa surfer is, and the reason I want you to talk about that is that I think that it's one of those awful situations where you could imagine that this could happen to you. Anybody listening, anybody watching this morning, they could become a sofa surfer. What is a sofa surfer?
Well, it's somebody who doesn't have a permanent base of their own, and rather than ending up sleeping rough on the streets, is moving from friends or family's house to house, spending a few nights here and there, but without a home to call their own. And there are already significant numbers of people in that situation. Many years ago, I worked for the charity Centrepoint, and we had a lot of young people in that situation at a time when the last Labour government was doing a huge amount to tackle rough sleeping and trying to get people into their own homes. What we've now seen is that because of this housing crisis, because of this mortgage crisis, there are far more people who are likely to become sofa surfers. So we're going to have to... sorry, there's a bit of an altercation going on behind me, I'm afraid.
Goodness me.
But there are 500,000 more people who are likely to be in that situation, according to Lichfields, which is an independent agency. We're really concerned about that, and that's why we're calling on mortgage brokers this afternoon to do more, and we're calling on the government to make those measures mandatory so that they're available to all mortgage holders and not just some.
Well, look, we'll take that argument up here in the studio. Sorry about you being hassled there, whatever's going on behind you. We appreciate your time today. Lisa Nandy is Shadow Secretary for Levelling Up Housing and Communities. Good luck with your job, what you're trying to do. So let's go to Greg Marsh, who's here in the studio. They're going to meet with the mortgage lenders, the big companies today about all of this. Can anything be done?
Some things, few things have been done, which one is that the government has put pressure on banks to offer some temporary support by allowing people who are struggling with repayments to move on to interest-only mortgages rather than repayment mortgages. Let's not kid ourselves, it's not like this is a panacea, but at least it provides that extra capacity. And the other thing to say is, if you're struggling with mortgage repayments, you should talk to your bank. Don't leave it. Don't assume the problem's going to go away. And for goodness sake, don't fall behind with your payments. Do agree a payment plan. The reality is that it's not like you could say, well, you know, people should have known when they took out a mortgage 2 years ago or 5 years ago, there was a risk that interest rates might go up. Of course, there's always a risk interest rates might go up. No mortgage broker, let's be honest, was advising anyone 3 years ago, 2 years ago, that mortgage interest rates might increase up to 6.66% is currently the average 2-year fixed deal on the market. That is vastly exceeds anyone's expectations. It exceeds the Bank of England's expectations. The Bank of England has consistently hoped and consistently predicted that interest rates wouldn't need to rise as fast as they have and that inflation would come down sooner. So this has been a shock for almost everybody: financial experts, central bankers, government policymakers, and of course individual homeowners. I think that increases the strength of the argument that the government may need to do more. They may need to provide additional support. Many people are going to struggle with repayments, even on interest-only alternatives. And it's not like everything else is getting cheaper. While we've seen a one-off fall in the price of energy, effective 1st of July, an average UK energy bill came down by 20%. That's the last time you're going to see that happen.
The net result is people are going to lose their homes.
There is some hope that while employment remains robust, the rate of home repossessions and defaults is not going to rise as fast as it has in previous sharp periods of interest rate rises. But I'm not complacent about that, because this could last for a lot longer than government forecasters or central bankers want us to acknowledge.
Greg Marsh, CEO of Nous, thank you very much indeed. From one Greg to another, Greg Dewhurst here with your Wednesday morning forecast.
That warm feeling inside. From boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. The day ahead is a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Some of these will be heavy at times and temperatures near average for the time of year. To the best of the sunshine first thing this morning across southeast England, but showers quickly spreading to all areas as we move through the day. Some of the showers could be heavy at times, the risk of some hail and thunder, particularly across northern England into Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland as well. There will be some parts that stay dry all day, but I expect most places will catch a shower. Feeling quite cool where we have a keen breeze around the coast, temperatures in the high teens to low 20s, perhaps 23 or 24 as a maximum temperature towards the far southeast. Through into the evening time, further showers across many areas, though they tend to become more well scattered as we head into the early hours, allowing for clearer spells to develop. But just notice there will be still some showers that carry on through the night. In terms of temperatures, generally a little lower than they have been, 13 or 14 to start Thursday morning. So a bright start for many, but scattered showers from the word go. Some of them will be heavy at times, and through the day, a mixture of sunny spells and showers. Showers hopefully less frequent, less heavy compared to the last few days, but some of them could be on the sharp side at times. Quite a bit of Wales, the Midlands could stay dry all day. Showers generally further north and further south across the UK. In the best of the sunshine, temperatures again up into the low 20s, a little cooler around the coasts.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, next, as the IMF warns that homeowners will face more pain after rates hit a 15-year high. We're going to be talking about more of that and getting more of your views. gbviews@gbnews.com, or you can tweet at gbnews. Keep them coming in.
On 7:31. Welcome back. Still to come on our programme this morning. At 8:20, we're talking about a new study that has found that women are actually only responsible for 18% of road traffic accidents. So we're asking, should men be kept off the roads to make them safer? I promise I didn't come up with this segment, but it should be a lively debate. Then just after 9 o'clock, we'll take a look at the alarming rise in killer whales attacking people and boats and find out what exactly is behind that behaviour. Some people suggesting it could be revenge. Send in your thoughts this morning. We love to hear from you. GBViews at gbnews.com. Now, councils are returning to the High Court today in an attempt to prevent illegal migrants from being housed on their doorstep. West Lindsey District Council in Lincolnshire and Braintree Council in Essex are seeking to challenge the decision to house asylum seekers at former military bases. And our East Midlands reporter, Will Hollis, has been looking into it.
For months now, no aircraft has flown in or out of RAF Scampton. But soon, hundreds of asylum seekers could start landing here. Residents like Jason live on the camp's edge. He says government proposals sideline the people living here.
It feels like we don't matter. Like nothing that we've got to say matters at all. Realistically, although they say temporary, I would guess many, many years. We would be the community that essentially picks up the pieces once they've gone.
The Home Office risks being overwhelmed by the backlog of asylum claims. In March, it announced a plan to build temporary accommodation at old military bases to accommodate thousands of migrants. One here at Scampton near Lincoln, another at Wethersfield in Essex. Local councils have hit back, claiming it's the wrong plan in the wrong place. They say that the Home Office is misusing planning legislation. Snap back to the present, West Lindsey and Braintree councils are getting their day in court. The Permissions hearing today will determine whether the bigger judicial review can happen. Roger is Scampton's councillor. He says a multi-million-pound deal to develop the old Dambusters RAF base into a heritage attraction is at risk.
It's not about the asylum seekers. Everybody focuses on that to an extent. Not about the asylum seekers. It's about people's jobs, future jobs, the regeneration of everything. It's about whether we have a future ourselves as an estate or we don't have a future, which has happened at other bases. If I wasn't confident, I'd be depressed. You know, I don't want to be depressed.
In a statement, the Home Office said, delivering accommodation on surplus military sites will end the use of expensive hotels to house those arriving in small boats. We continue to work closely with the local authorities to address the local community's concerns.
Nobody's spoken to us about it. They're from the Home Office. No one. And as I said, the only response I've seen from the Home Office is to confirm that they will not speak to us face to face.
The swelling pressure on Britain's asylum system is spilling out across the country. Despite intentions, it's unknown if it will wash through here. Will Hollis, GB News, Scampton.
We were asking you guys to send in your thoughts on that story. David says, are there any disused MOD bases in the migrants' original country that could be used and Home Office UK Army could protect and process from there? John says, I just don't understand why illegal immigrants who become asylum seekers are allowed to wander free. Surely the camps at Scampton and Wethersfield should be secure to so the inmates, interesting choice of word there, can't leave. This seems to me to be the problem. The locals aren't safe. Let us know your thoughts.
We're running a story today about two Ford Capris from the 1980s show, The Professionals, are up for sale. Silverstone Auctions of Warwickshire next week. And they reckon they'll get £230,000, almost £250,000 for them. They sell as a pair. Tam says, I love the Capri car, brings back amazing memories. When I was 16, I was going through an awful time in my life until I met my future husband. He was a young man with the most beautiful canary yellow Capri, which I remember. People talk about knights on white horses. He was my knight in a bright yellow Ford Capri.
Aww.
Jack from Blackpool had a purple one. 1978 was the year. I bought it for 20 quid from a policeman and a pint I ran it for 2 years before I joined the Royal Navy. I served for 27 years. Those were the days before the world went mad, though I'm glad flares went out of fashion.
They've come back, I'm afraid. Hate to report it.
And high boy waistbands.
We were also in the papers last hour talking about this horrible cat virus that spread through, was it Cyprus? 300,000 cats, predominantly kittens, have been affected since the new year, and it's got you all, well, it actually started a bit of a cat versus dog debate in our inbox. Chris says dogs have owners, cats have staff. Tom says cats are only loyal to the people who feed them most. That's why cats go AWOL from their owners. And Mel says, I can't believe Isabel referred to dogs as dim. They're very intelligent. Sadly, often more intelligent than many of their human owners. Well, I'm not disputing that.
No, my dog Mel is nice, but dim. Doesn't do any fetching or doesn't do any tricks or doesn't do anything like that. But, you know, what I say? She's nice. She's very, very nice. I mean, she looked at me this morning. She just looks. And if I don't turn on that light, the alarm goes off. And if I don't turn on that light, and then I feel my toes being licked. And I say, Ruth, stop that.
No, stop it. That'll be in the tabloids tomorrow.
She licks my toes.
But Eamonn, imagine
Ruth,
if there was a killer virus.
Yes,
we've got the dog. Imagine if there was a doggy virus coming around killing off all the dogs. You'd be in a state of panic.
Awful.
You'd be quarantining Maggie at home.
All these
so lots of worries about this.
That are running around the world, and where do they come from, and who's making them, and are they deliberately released, and goodness knows.
Well, on that note, coming up, we'll be discussing, did China, see what I did there, send a spy to the House of Commons? We'll discuss that when we go through the papers next. Welcome back. It's 7:41. We are going through the papers this morning with Sean McDonald, the broadcaster and host of Blethered.
Have I anything?
I don't know.
Have I anything hanging?
Yeah, you're unplugged.
Where?
And the columnist and Conservative Home and GB News presenter Emily Carver. Emily, we're starting with you again this hour, and really interesting what was going on with this illegal migration bill. Obviously 20 amendments being suggested by the Lords, being rejected by MPs last night, but a small Conservative rebellion, including former Home Secretary and Prime Minister Theresa May.
Yes, Theresa May and also Ian Duncan-Smith. Both of them are very concerned about the illegal migration bill and the impact it might have on victims of modern slavery. I think it's fair enough what they're saying. They are worried that A, it will mean that victims aren't protected, and B, it might actually prevent us from going after the trafficking gangs themselves, who are, you know, the perpetrators of this trafficking and potentially modern slavery. So this is something for the government to chew over. They have already made concessions on this bill over unaccompanied children, over pregnant mothers, and how long you can detain children for as well when they come over. So it does seem like this bill is going to look a little bit different, quite a bit different from when it entered the Commons to begin with. But of course the Lords, there are many Lords and peers who have tried to wreck this bill entirely, and I think that's where there's a bit of controversy.
Including Justin Welby.
Yes, including Justin Welby. Should the Lords, yes, the Lords is there to scrutinise, and they should be able to propose amendments, but I don't believe they should be able to completely destroy the hopes of a bill to go through.
But they aren't able to, because as has been demonstrated. But as demonstrated, I suppose, yesterday by the MPs, they've had another look.
They haven't on this occasion. But I do think some of them might be a little bit too uppity, perhaps, because the Commons is the elected chamber, and people like Shami Chakrabarti have tried purposefully to wreck the entire bill, which I don't believe is democratic. But hey, it does look like the bill is going through, but do the government have enough time?
Well, yeah, probably not. Not in time for the election.
The Chancellor, and this is front page of The Guardian, he's saying, look, forget it, public sector. When it comes to pay negotiations, there's no chance of you getting anything, certainly 6% or above. You're going to get what we have budgeted for. There's no extra money, so that's about 5 to 6% is the most that unions could expect. How's that going to go down, or what's your view on that?
Yeah, I think it'll be received in a sort of mixed way. You've got various government ministers, such as the Education Secretary, Health Secretary, Defence Secretary, Justice Secretary and the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, who are all basically pushing Rishi Sunak to back the independent review bodies who are recommending far higher than the $5 billion that's been set aside. It's the estimated difference between the budgeted rises of 3.5% and the peer review body's recommendations. Rishi Sunak's under a bit of pressure. Government sources are saying that he's not going to make a decision until he's back from the NATO summit in Vilnius, which will be tonight. But the government have kind of built a rod for their own back, that being basically Rishi Sunak and his ministers spent most of last year arguing against proposals from trade unions, saying that they would have to abide by the independent body's recommendations, but now the independent body's making a recommendation.
And they think maybe not. Maybe
they're
not.
saying, actually, do you know what, maybe we're not going to go with that. I kind of do understand the point that's been made by, like the Bank of England, in saying that in order to curb inflation, we have to kind of stop somewhere. We have to go through a period of pain.
But the pain seems to be for the public sector workers. I mean, the private sector, 7.3% wage growth just in the last 3 months.
What's interesting, I think, is that the Labour can't really attack the government on this because they've made it quite clear through reports and what they've actually said, Rachel Reeves has actually said, that they're not going to be dishing out the cash either. They've said that they are going to essentially be sticking to Conservatives' public spending plans. So I think there are going to be a lot of disappointed public sector workers come the next election, if Labour do get in, who aren't going to get these big inflation-busting pay rises either.
Yeah, I would say Labour are definitely going to be the beneficiaries. I would probably tend to agree with you and say that they're not going to be making any sort of mad spending increases either. But as we reach, or as we approach, the general election, with this impasse or this stalemate kind of staying as it is, then yeah, Labour are going to be the beneficiaries of it.
I noticed the Royal Mail settled with their workers yesterday as well. It was over, I think it was over 3 years, 10% over 3 years.
And we've talked about this before. If we were the government, we would be singing from the rafters when there is a settlement, because they don't make enough press out of it, I don't think. It's hardly mentioned
That is a very good
this
point.
morning.
That is a very good point. They don't make any fuss about their wins. I mean, it's just the state of the Conservative Party, isn't it, really?
Do you think they've maybe just sort of accepted how things are going to go?
I think some of them
I don't think so. I think they're going to go down fighting. Speaking of going down fighting, Zelensky absolutely fuming that NATO have given sort of fairly vague words in this communique. Emily, and this is covered on page 5 of the Telegraph, but I mean, NATO's between a rock and a hard place. They want to show a pathway, they want to unite behind Ukraine, but clearly Article 5 means if Ukraine's part of NATO, then all of us are at war with Russia. Can't do that.
Well, you have to act.
You have to act, which
doesn't
means
necessarily mean boots on the ground, but yes, that is what you would assume. The problem is that Ukraine was promised that it would join NATO back in 2008. They blame the 2014 invasion, the invasion that happened last year that's still ongoing, on the fact that they're not part of NATO. They feel very angry about this. Zelensky obviously feels. He's been out on Twitter saying, well, being furious, as the headline says, saying it's an absurd rejection. I understand Ukraine's position, but I think that we should be wary of allowing Ukraine into NATO simply because of the potential for escalation.
Well, this is speculation on my part, but do you think that there's maybe a sort of belief that it could be coming to an end? Because, as Isabel points out, it would then automatically mean that we were all at war with Russia, when it could be at a point where they're thinking this is going to start slowing down, so why don't add fuel to these...
Well, they're only talking about NATO membership once the war ends. So I think that's why Zelensky feels particularly perturbed.
But there is a sense of optimism. I think you're right, Sean. I mean, there's talk about this G7 side meeting on the outskirts of this NATO meeting, and they've come up with a security agreement when they're talking about the hope of peace in Europe again, which is significant. And, you know, let's hope it happens. Yeah. Gosh.
So there was this big meeting in the House of Commons, this briefing to Hong Kong dissidents, and China sent a spy, shock horror, making front page of the Daily Mail. I mean, I thought that's what spies were for.
Yeah, so the allegation or this sort of suggestion is, that China sent a spy to infiltrate a meeting which took place in a very sort of secure, top-level place or part of the House of Commons, Committee Room 19. It's located away upstairs, where there is highly unlikely to be any tourists or any public visitors, of which I have been before. You kind of do get a bit of a free run if you're getting to go around the House of Commons. I was really surprised, but this is a very secure part, and it's basically believed that this was someone sent from the Chinese Communist Party to spy on these dissidents who are objecting to China's ruling and sort of influence in Hong Kong when it comes to police matters and security. It is definitely something to be concerned about, I would say.
Absolutely.
I think if China are showing such disregard for the security and sovereign sort of protection, whatever you want to call it, of the House of Commons. There has been allegations basically as well that they've been sending people to intimidate what you would call, these dissidents in terms of attacks and sort of following them around where they live. Yeah. Definitely something to be pretty worried about, to be honest.
Can we do the other story on the front of the Daily Mail?
Oh, this baby Frank.
Frankie. Which is nice news, isn't it?
Lovely news.
Boris Johnson and Carrie...
8 or 9? I lose track.
8, I think.
8.
That we know of.
Right.
Boris and Carrie have had another baby, Frank Alfred Odysseus Johnson. So Frank's making a comeback and Odysseus is back too. And The Guardian wrote something that was a little bit mean. They pointed out that Odysseus was known, of course, for, abandoning his wife and children to go off on adventure, encountering many women along the way. So I think they were making a little pointed remark there, in The Guardian anyway.
When Carrie posted the news, she said, you can guess which of the names my husband chose, so...
Definitely Odysseus.
It's great timing, though, because Boris Johnson, after saying that he was going to hand over his WhatsApp messages to the COVID inquiry, has failed to do so. So that's a a convenient and handy, timely distraction, isn't it?
Very sweet.
But
all
as
about blonde
Isabel
hair.
said to me this morning, most men wouldn't hand over their phones because they'll all have something to conceal on it.
Well,
That's probably
most
true.
men aren't Prime Minister, you know.
Yeah.
He has to hand it over.
Yeah,
And he
we
said
don't
he
want
would.
to
He
see.
said
I think
he
I
had
said I don't want to see what's on most men's phone.
But I had to
I think
hand
if
my
it's a-
phone over to Michael McIntyre.
Yeah,
his
oh
shows.
yeah, I remember that.
And,
I was worrying what he was.
apps, and he found it very amusing that I had an app which highlighted
I've heard about this.
public toilets
This is handy.
toilets that are available
Oh gosh.
publicly for anybody. So that
Were
would
you a
be
bit George
petrol
Michael?
stations, so I trust you to think of that. Trust you. Or it's only urinary problems that I'm thinking of. But let's finish with the Ford Caprice. So we've highlighted this today. So The Professionals, which was a show in the early 80s on ITV.
Anyone remember that on this panel? No, just checking.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't remember. Never heard of it, sorry.
TV history, but 2 cracker Ford Capris available from this. A Stratus Silver Capri, driven by Lewis Collins, and the Solar Gold model by Martin Shaw's character.
Does this fill you with nostalgia?
I have a big regret in life that I didn't get a Ford Capri.
Really?
But would you pay more than you would for a Ferrari for one today? I mean, I don't understand the price tag.
No, the price tag is
Ridiculous.
1 million quid
Yeah.
is too much. Whether
I don't understand.
What-
But then I wouldn't spend more than 5 to 10k on a car, I don't think.
What would you
I love a
spend?
banger, me.
You won't get much for that.
Like nostalgia-wise, what would you happily part with 250 grand for?
Very little.
George Best's 1968 shot.
No. Yeah, actually, now you say it.
I would take a Jimmy Johnson or a Billy McNeil.
Jimmy Johnson. I used to have a Jimmy Johnson key ring.
Did you?
Yeah, and he had the ball
Jimmy
attached to his
Johnson?
foot, the ball was attached to his foot, basically. Absolute incredible guy. Interviewed him once, so entertaining, lovely guy. Celtic winger, Jimmy Johnson, legendary. So basically, £250,000 for 2 Capris, a silver one and a gold one, and if you're interested, Silverstone Auctions of Warwickshire, and I think they're due to be sold, I think it's next week. £250,000. There we go. Greg Dewhurst has your Wednesday morning forecast.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. The day ahead is a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Some of these will be heavy at times and temperatures near average for the time of year. To the best of the sunshine first thing this morning across southeast England, but showers quickly spreading to all areas as we move through the day. Some of the showers could be heavy at times, the risk of some hail and thunder, particularly across northern England into Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland as well. There will be some parts that stay dry all day, but I expect most places will catch a shower. Feeling quite cool where we have a keen breeze around the coast, temperatures in the high teens to low 20s, perhaps 23 or 24 as a maximum temperature towards the far southeast. Through into the evening time, further showers across many areas, though they tend to become more well scattered as we head into the early hours, allowing for clearer spells to develop. But just notice there will be still some showers that carry on through the night. In terms of temperatures, generally a little lower than they have been, 13 or 14 to start Thursday morning. So a bright start for many, but scattered showers from the word go. Some of them will be heavy at times, and through the day, a mixture of sunny spells and showers. Showers hopefully less frequent, less heavy compared to the last few days, but some of them could be on the sharp side at times. Quite a bit of Wales, the Midlands could stay dry all day. Showers generally further north and further south across the UK. In the best of the sunshine, temperatures again up into the low 20s, a little cooler around the coasts.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Right, stay with us. Coming up, we're going to have more for you on the BBC presenter scandal as a trio of new allegations have come to light.
The 12th, a day to celebrate history, community and family here in Northern Ireland. Join me, Arlene Foster.
And me, Dougie Beattie, as we bring you live coverage of the July 12th celebrations from the beautiful city of Belfast.
And right across the United Kingdom. It's all happening here on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New allegations in the BBC presenter scandal, claims of abusive messages and lockdown rule breaking.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock on Wednesday the 12th of July. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Wherever you're watching, wherever you're listening, you're very welcome. Leading the news this morning.
The suspended BBC presenter is facing a series of new revelations this morning as it's alleged he sent abusive messages to someone on a dating app and broke COVID restrictions to meet with a young person in 2021. Our home editor, Mark White, will bring us all the latest.
Well, another BBC star claims that it may be time for this unnamed presenter to come forward, clearly piling the pressure on this presenter, saying that this place is on its knees and if he loves the BBC, then he should consider speaking out.
Volodymyr Zelensky has said it's absurd that NATO won't set a time frame for Ukraine joining the group ahead of a meeting with President Joe Biden. G7 leaders will today announce a long-term security deal.
Mortgage payers grappling with the most expensive home loans in 15 years should prepare for even higher borrowing costs over the coming months, according to the International Monetary Fund.
Ukrainian tennis star Elena Svitolina has said her experience... Her name split over two lines, didn't help me. Anyway, everybody knows her now. Her experience of the war made her stronger as she celebrated one of the biggest wins of her career against the world #1.
And we're asking whether you need an umbrella today, and we'll have your answer a little bit later on.
Good morning. Heavy showers in the forecast once again today. Find out exactly where they'll be in the forecast later on with me.
OK, the top story again today is this unnamed BBC presenter facing a trio of further allegations. That makes 4 allegations in total. We've got the Sun newspaper today reporting that he broke lockdown rules to meet a 23-year-old at a time when it was illegal to mix.
The Sun also carries claims that the suspended presenter sent messages to a 17-year-old who was still at school, including heart emojis and kisses, described as creepy.
So, new allegations from the BBC themselves that the unnamed host sent abusive messages to a young person. I don't like this description. A young person implies all innocence.
They're an adult.
What?
It was an adult.
I know, but
23
it's like
is
young
an adult.
and pure, and what were they doing on this app in the first place type thing. And these abusive messages, let's face it, this young person threatened to expose the profile of this older person.
You'd call that blackmail in other circumstances.
Yeah, so would you not be abusive? Ask yourself, you know, if someone was doing that to you, would you not be abusive? I'm not saying it's right or wrong or whatever, but what were, especially the BBC presenter, what was he doing on a dating app when he is a married man with children? Let's go to Mark White, broadcasting house for us this morning. It was a big day for the BBC, lots of dodging and explanations and whatever. Are we moving on? Are we going to hear anything different today? Are we any closer to the presenter being named, Mark?
Well, I think we're in a very difficult place because there is, of course, now a new set of allegations that have been reported by BBC News themselves and by The Sun again, as we expected this morning. But the BBC are in a place where they can't actually carry out their own investigation because they've been told to suspend internal investigations by the Metropolitan Police while they scope out the original allegations that were made on the 18th of May to the BBC that then were splashed in The Sun last Friday. And the BBC, or the Metropolitan Police, I should say, are still trying to determine whether there was a criminal offence that may have been committed in that particular set of allegations. We should just again remind the audience that this was the parents of a young person claiming that the BBC presenter had taken advantage of a vulnerable young person, had asked for explicit photographs and had paid large sums of money to this young person. The person later, through lawyers, denied that, but the parents, again, who it seems are estranged from this person, are sticking by their story, saying that the presenter has got inside this young person's head. It's all very, very messy, and as I say, the more time that passes, the more revelations that are coming out. But the BBC finds itself in this very difficult position because it just can't actively investigate those other claims until the Met decides what on earth it is going to do. And add to that this very high-profile presenter, Jeremy Vine, coming out last night and saying it may be time for the unnamed presenter at the centre of these allegations to speak out publicly. Jeremy Vine said that if this presenter loves his place, and he believes that this presenter does, then he will realise that this place is on its knees and it might be time to consider coming out and speaking.
Mark, thanks very much indeed. Well, let's bring in Tim Luckhurst, who's a former BBC editor and a professor of journalism as well. Very warm welcome to the programme. As we're just hearing from Mark there, the pressure being piled on by the likes of Jeremy Vine saying step out of the shadows if you love this place, and also these fresh allegations. And I suppose my question to you is, how much longer can the BBC hold the line? You know, how long can this hiatus be expected to continue?
I'll answer your question, Isabel, but I'm principal of South College at Durham University, and I do wish you would use that title rather than my previous title.
I'm so sorry, I'll tell you why. The autocue froze at that moment, and I was just grappling through my notes to find your title, but do forgive me.
Look, on the face of it, the presenter's got a lot of questions to answer. That is certainly the case. And I would share the view that it would be great if he could come forward, but there are many reasons why I think that's extremely unlikely. What we've got at the moment is the BBC balancing its moral and legal obligations as carefully as it possibly can under enormous pressure. The Sun doing its job on behalf of its readers, which is an impressive exercise of press freedom and one which I compliment because I think the Sun has been doing a good job on this story. What happens next? Well, we've got an extraordinary set of legal complexities. Of course, there's another side to this story. We would all very much like to hear that other side of the story. And you've both made some very good points. In other circumstances, some of what's being alleged might constitute blackmail or at least unreasonable pressure. We just don't know. In some circumstances, the suggestions being made about the presenter might be interpreted as being rather distasteful, but entirely legal conduct. We really do need to hear from both sides. But whilst the police are involved in any way, the BBC can't complete its investigation, and we're not going to hear, I don't think, from the person at the centre of these allegations, because if the person is taking legal advice, that legal advice is probably going to be there's no advantage to speaking up and identifying yourself at the moment.
And talking about legal advice, do you think this whole, the survival of the career of this presenter could actually hang on whether or not they broke the law? Because it certainly seems the original allegation, the suggestion that this victim was under 18, has now been denied by that person in question, although the family stand by what they originally said. It seems as though the possible only kind of illegal activity at the moment could be the breaking of lockdown rules.
That could be the case. We're speculating, but there's a central point here. Is criminality the only basis on which the BBC could dispense with the services of someone accused of this sort of misconduct? Well, no. Of course, the BBC's got editorial guidelines. It has a duty as an employer as well, and it takes that duty very seriously. But you don't actually have to break the law to lose your job at the BBC. If you have in any way broken the editorial guidelines, if there's been a form of conduct which has persistently breached the BBC's principles and values, that would be sufficient, I would have thought, to bring about the end of a career at the BBC. But of course, we've got no evidence that the person accused has broken those editorial guidelines or principles, and that's where the BBC's got a problem. It has competing duties to its employee, to the young people at the centre of these allegations, and of course to its licence-paying public. There's a very difficult balancing act.
Yeah. I was wondering, Tim, I mean, you summed it up quite well there. you know, how outraged should we all be about this? It's all right. You know, this guy, his biggest sin is being in the public eye. The biggest sin is that he's a household name, which people are obviously going to be very interested in as well. But when you talk about protocols and values there, I suppose when you think of it, there is a lot at stake here. Do you think whether this man wins, loses or draws, he has a career ahead of him in television? I ask you as a former editor.
Given that I can't identify this individual, and none of us can, it's a very difficult question to answer. I think that sometimes such allegations end careers entirely, and it wouldn't be surprising in this case if these allegations are substantiated, if the presenter at the centre of those allegations ended up spending his career not appearing on television in future. That would not astonish me. It's not inconceivable that another employer might want to re-employ someone with a very high profile, but it will depend entirely on what the final outcome of this inquiry, whichever form it takes, criminal or internal to the BBC or both. It will depend on the outcome of these inquiries. What are the facts? This story has been marked from the very beginning by a huge amount of speculation and a real absence of hard factual evidence. It's been smoke and mirrors from the very beginning, and that's partly because of the legal complexities involved, partly because of competition between a great newspaper and the BBC.
Then I ask you, Tim, would it not be in this man's interest to declare himself, to step forward himself?
My overwhelming impression is that the advice he's getting is that that's not the case. But I'm speculating. It has been possible for the individual to come forward for a long time. Jeremy Vine, a very, very popular colleague and someone who I've known for a long time, has made the very sensible request that this individual come forward. I know that there's real anger in the BBC newsroom. I know that there are many senior BBC journalists who wish that this person would come forward. But this individual will be listening to legal advice, and that legal advice, I suspect, will be prominent in his mind, not the views of his colleagues. Let's put it like that.
And I just want to ask you, talking of career ending, Tim Davie as Director General, do you think his position is in question? He hasn't exactly covered himself in glory, not least with the handling of the Gary Lineker saga as well.
It's been a difficult time for Tim Davie. I don't think his career is in jeopardy in the short term. It is a very difficult job. I think yesterday he identified the key problem in the way that the BBC had approached the original allegations, which was the 7-week gap between the parents initially contacting the BBC and the issue being drawn to the attention of the BBC's senior leadership team. Now, Tim Davie said he wondered whether it had been red flagged early enough, whether it had come to their attention quickly enough. I suspect that he will conclude that it didn't, and that that's a problem. The BBC is a very large organisation. Certainly it listened to the original complaint, but it didn't seem to pursue it with any great aplomb until much later. That may be because what the parents told the BBC was not what we're now hearing, that it was much less detailed. We don't know, but Tim Davie's right to have identified that. So I don't think that the Director General is at fault when the BBC faces troubles during his incumbency. Tim Davie has had a series of crises to deal with. I disagreed with him about the Gary Lineker issue, but he handled himself with confidence, and he's done so on this occasion. I think he's a man doing a tough job in difficult times. I'm afraid being Director General of the BBC is a tough job, and there are often difficult times.
OK, well, speaking of tough jobs, Principal of South College at Durham University and former BBC executive, thanks very much indeed for talking to us, Tim Luckhurst.
Thank you. That was Tim Luckhurst's view there in his position as a professor of journalism and a former BBC editor. If you've got a view, if you think you know or you feel where this should go next, what would be the best outcome for all involved, let us know. gbviews@gbnews.com. Your comments are very welcome.
The US President will hold talks with his Ukrainian counterparts, Volodymyr Zelensky, at the NATO summit in Lithuania today.
Now, this follows strong words from President Zelensky calling the decision for the alliance not to set a time frame for Ukraine joining the group unprecedented and absurd.
Well, this comes as G7 leaders prepare to announce a long-term security arrangement with Ukraine. Our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, is at the summit in Lithuania.
Well, we saw pretty angry President Zelensky arrive here in Lithuania yesterday, clearly not happy with ultimately the conclusion of NATO that Ukraine is not going to be able to join it anytime soon, calling the entire situation absurd. In contrast, it must be said, to the reaction of the people here in Lithuania to his arrival. We've been in the centre of town where he was surrounded by hundreds of people, very keen to see him, very keen to show their support and appreciation for the Ukrainian president. But as I say, he was pretty angry with the ultimate memorandum from NATO. President Zelensky's argument in all of this is that he fears if there are peace talks with Russia, that NATO's support, but also Ukraine's ultimate membership for Ukraine could well be on the table, and it could be bartered away. That's why he wants it sorted as soon as possible. From NATO's point of view, they could not, they argue, allow Ukraine to join while there's an active war, because that would escalate the war between an all-out war, if you like, between NATO and Russia. So clearly there will be some awkward talks today, because President Zelensky says he's going to be frank with world leaders. He's going to meet with President Biden and with Rishi Sunak a little later on this morning. There is some good news, though, for Ukraine overnight. That is that the G7 have signed what they describe as an unprecedented agreement of further support for Ukraine. Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, saying that he hopes it will potentially return peace to Europe. It includes yet more equipment, yet much more support in terms of intelligence sharing from the G7. Many are making it akin to the United States arrangement with Israel, that level of support. The Prime Minister frankly saying that it would send a strong signal to President Putin, and that it will help progress that counteroffensive that we're seeing taking place. So there is some good news, as I say, for Ukraine today. It is an unprecedented agreement. There is no doubt about that. And there is no sign that the support, not least of all from NATO, militarily is going to continue for Ukraine, but also be, and no doubt, that President Zelensky is angry, and he may well show that anger to world leaders, to NATO leaders gathered here in Lithuania later on today.
So here we are. It is the 12th of July on this Wednesday. It is a public holiday in Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland marking... No, it's not called Orangeman's Day.
What's it called?
It's because it's 12th of July.
12th of July.
Never heard of it called Orangeman's Day in my life.
It's very Orange Day, though.
But anyway, it marks 333 years since the Battle of the Boyne.
And organisers are expecting almost 500,000 people to participate in the festival. Orangemen, women and juniors, accompanied by 600 marching bands, will step out at various locations across the country, including in Liverpool.
Yes, not just in Northern Ireland. It'll happen in Glasgow and Newcastle, in Liverpool as well. We go to Liverpool first of all. Our man Theo Chikumba there to tell us more. Theo.
Yes, a very good morning to you both. As you mentioned, this is just one location among many across the UK and, of course, in Northern Ireland. But here in Liverpool, marching bands will be going into the centre of Liverpool this morning before they head over to Southport. But as you mentioned, this is marking the Battle of the Boyne, and, of course, many will be attending that today. We are kindly joined this morning by Steve. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Just tell me why this day is so important.
Well, the day is so important, as you've already said. We're celebrating the 333rd anniversary of King William's victory at the Battle of the Boyne, and more so the legacy that he left us of civil and religious liberty for everybody. So it's a tradition in Liverpool that we march on the 12th of July, like our brethren and sisters over in Ulster. We've been marching here on the 12th of July since 1819, so the institution was formed shortly before that in Liverpool, only a matter of a few years after it was came into in existence over in Ulster in 1795. So it's a very important day for our membership. It's a day when we all get together, see our friends maybe we haven't seen for 12 months or so, but yeah, it's a very, very important day which we celebrate every year.
Already members of your lodge are here, anticipating to go into town, but what's going to be taking place here as well?
Well, this morning, really, it's a case of people all mustering up and getting each band and lodge ready and moving into position from where we actually start the parade, about half a mile away from here, and then we'll march in formation down to the city centre. We'll meet lodges which are parading from the other side of the city, and then we'll proceed down to Lime Street onto a fleet of buses through to Southport. And then in Southport, we're joined by the rest of the membership from Liverpool who don't travel into the city centre, and also lodges from around the country, Manchester, Sheffield, Birmingham, and further afield we have visitors from Scotland as well. So it's a big day once we get to Southport.
Preparing this day, I suppose, logistically, how do you go about that?
Yeah, it's a big task. We have various committees that are set up, look after different aspects of it. But fortunately, because we do it every year, really it runs like a well-oiled machine, really. We all know what we're doing. We know where we're going to be. We know what time we need to be there. So there is a lot of preparation, but it's something which, as I say, we just, each year it clicks into place and we go from there, really. There's never many issues at all, you know.
Brilliant. And just tell me about the flowers that will be laid down as well this morning.
Yeah, we lay flowers on our memorial garden in the provincial headquarters in memory of all of our members who've passed away. Obviously, the people who've passed away, most of them have given long service to the institution. So we feel it's just right to mark their service this morning before we start our parades by laying some flowers and just taking a moment to reflect on the dedication and service that they've given to the institution over the years.
Steve, thank you so much for your time this morning. Well, hundreds are expected to head over into the centre of Liverpool this morning before they head over to Southport, where thousands are expected to be there this afternoon.
Theo, thank you very much indeed.
Now, you were very good in getting in touch today. I started talking about Ford Capris, which was a brilliant car from the 70s and 80s, a car I never possessed myself. I've thought about buying one.
I put it to you, that will never happen, given the price tag.
Oh, but they wouldn't normally go for this.
Right.
These are two used for the television series The Professionals. So Lewis Collins and Martin Shaw drove these. Not that particular one, that's not it at all. But
this one belongs to Sue, one of our viewers.
Examples, yeah. So the famous auction's going up next week. So this is Sue is telling us.
Hi, Sue, there she is.
That car for over 50 years. An incredible framework, incredible piece of work there. 50 years old, I think that car is.
She says her husband proposed to her in it. That's so sweet.
Aww.
And if you're listening on the radio, it's a lovely picture of a silver Capri.
Must have very many happy memories.
Let's not
look
go
at
there.
that car, and I think that led to marriage.
I know what twinkle in your eye means there. Kristen and Mark from Croydon say this is Talacat Sanctuary in... Oh, we're talking about a different story now. I'm very confused.
Did you think Talacat was a car?
I thought we were talking about Capris. No idea we're talking about cats. Look at that's my idea of heaven. Anyway, again, if you're listening on the radio, it is a picture of a lot of cats. It's a cat sanctuary in Cyprus. And sadly, we were talking earlier about 300,000 cats, predominantly kittens, being affected by this fatal virus. But they visited that.
That's a lot of cats.
Yeah,
there.
well, that's where it would spread as well. So I'd say keep them in some sort of quarantine if you can. They visited the cat sanctuary there yesterday.
Well, thanks very much.
Sorry, I didn't realise you were doing that,
Loved
Charlie.
Capri there. And then there's a place called Capri.
That's more my kind of Capri.
Yes.
Where you drink limoncello all day long. There's lemons
and then
hanging.
there's that drink, isn't there? There's a Capri Sun.
Oh, yeah, Capri Sun, yeah.
And so
and there's Capricorn.
But I think it'd be good, that Capri.
Yeah, why? I don't understand. I don't even think it's that pretty.
You don't?
I don't get it. You could get a Ferrari for that price. I don't like Ferraris either. I'm the wrong girl for this kind of chat. I don't get excited about...
Silver or gold?
I'd probably go for silver because I don't even think that looks like gold. It looks like a dirty yellow. I hate it. I'll say it. Oh, that's cute. Actually, that's more my style.
That's Sue's.
I like Sue's one. Is that sort of minty blue? Oh, that looks silver now.
With a black roof.
OK, well, I like that one, but I don't like these ones.
And she got proposed to in that car.
Why do you look at me with that one?
Saying. Anyway, let's bring you up to date with the rest of the stories of the time. 8:23.
And a 15-year-old schoolboy will appear in court accused of attempting wounding and possession of a bladed article after a teacher was stabbed in Gloucestershire. Maths teacher Jamie Sampson suffered a wound in a corridor at Tewkesbury Academy at just after 9 a.m. on Monday.
Ministers are facing calls to make further concessions to their asylum reforms after senior Conservative MPs joined a small backbench rebellion over the illegal migration bill. MPs spent more than 3.5 hours holding 18 votes in the Commons that saw several amendments made by the House of Lords overturned.
environmental regulators will be able to charge polluters unlimited penalties for causing damage, the Department for the Environment has confirmed. The government says the current limit of £250,000 is to be scrapped following a consultation with widespread public support. That sounds like great news.
Yeah. Thank goodness for something with widespread public support, and we can all recognise that poisonous pollution, horrendous, filthy, ghastly stuff shouldn't be allowed to happen.
Absolutely.
As a matter of fact, litter in general, I just have this thing. I don't understand the mentality of people who drop litter. I don't understand somebody that folds up a stained mattress in the back of their car and then dumps it in a beautiful country lane. And who takes their washing machine and does the same with that, dumps that? I mean, there should be a special place in hell for people like that.
Oh, there will be.
I think so. I think so. Anyway, Wednesday, here we are. What's the day going to be like for the parades and everything else? Here's your Wednesday forecast.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GBNews.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. The day ahead is a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Some of these will be heavy at times and temperatures near average for the time of year. To the best of the sunshine first thing this morning across southeast England, but showers quickly spreading to all areas as we move through the day. Some of the showers could be heavy at times, the risk of some hail and thunder, particularly across northern England into Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland as well. There will be some parts that stay dry all day, but I expect most places will catch a shower. Feeling quite cool where we have a keen breeze around the coast, temperatures in the high teens to low 20s, perhaps 23 or 24 as a maximum temperature towards the far southeast. Through into the evening time, further showers across many areas, though they tend to become more well scattered as we head into the early hours, allowing for clearer spells to develop. But just notice there will be still some showers that carry on through the night. In terms of temperatures, generally a little lower than they have been, 13 or 14 to start Thursday morning. So a bright start for many, but scattered showers from the word go. Some of them will be heavy at times, and through the day, a mixture of sunny spells and showers. Showers hopefully less frequent, less heavy compared to the last few days, but some of them could be on the sharp side at times. Quite a bit of Wales, the Midlands could stay dry all day. Showers generally further north and further south across the UK. In the best of the sunshine, temperatures again up into the low 20s, a little cooler around the coasts.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GBNews.
Now, we're doing a lot of talking about cars on the programme today, and this ties into a story we're going to be talking about next. A new study has found that women are only responsible...
Don't know why this is a surprise.
...for 1 in 5 road traffic accidents.
Yeah,
so the other 4 out of 5 are...
the less fair sex.
Well, unless they don't identify as men.
Oh, don't.
If they identify as pussycats or something.
Oh, for goodness sake.
But anyway, but basically, 18% of accidents responsible women.
Yeah.
And the rest of them men.
Right, so should we just lock up the guys and say, you're not allowed on the roads?
See, I wouldn't disagree with that.
Would you not?
In terms of men being aggressive drivers or bad drivers, you just have to be a decent driver. Do you know how many offences I have on my licence? I got my licence in 1970.
You think I'm boring? You drive like a granddad, really slowly. Please, after you. Good morning. Eamonn Holmes, it's what you do, isn't it? Like Postman Pat on his round. I've got things to do, places to go.
I'm not Postman Pat. I wave to people.
The Royal Wave.
All the time.
You just need a Pope-mobile.
But anyway. Women, are they safe on the roads? Are men not? We'll be talking about that next. We ask a general question now. Who would you say is a better driver, a man or a woman?
Well, I just think of my parents. My dad took 5 attempts to pass his driving test, and I think he only got through because my mum was 9 months pregnant, and the driver was like, "Not you guys again. Go on." But he shouldn't be allowed on the road. God love you, Dad. And me and my husband, I'm probably a better driver. So on that basis, women.
Would your husband agree with that?
Probably not.
OK. Well, according to a new report from CarWow, what would CarWow be? CarWow.
Never mind.
So the UK's road safety credentials would look better if only women drove, because the stats say women are safer.
And that's because, yeah, we're only responsible for 18% of motoring offences. So do you think it's time to stomp out the lazy stereotype that women are bad drivers and instead ban men from the roads? What a novel idea. Julie Cook thinks it's a cracking idea.
I do.
And
I do.
So much so you'd like to ban them from the roads. Meanwhile...
Howard Cox. Good morning, Howard. Howard thinks it's no more than headline-grabbing nonsense. Men always get a bad rap on everything, don't they, Howard?
No.
Yes, indeed. I mean, whatever I say, I'm going to be pilloried. It's as simple as that. The fact is that I've seen some brilliant female drivers. My wife is one of them. In 50 years, she's never had an accident. My mother, that's the same. She never had an accident, but I think she caused a dozen or so. The problem we have at the moment in time is that it's the dangerous drivers we should get off the road, not basing it on gender.
There you go, Julie. It's not about whether you're a man or a woman, it's about whether you're dangerous or not. But you would say that men are more dangerous behind the wheel.
The stats say that men are more dangerous. For example, there'd be a 59% reduction in drink driving and an 80% reduction in drug driving. And overall, we're only responsible for 18% of offences. So can you imagine if this was the other way around? Can you imagine if this was women who were mostly responsible? Men would be crying out for women to be banned from driving.
But, Howard, why do you think that is? Do you think that it's testosterone fueled as opposed to petrol or diesel fueled?
Well, I've been driving for 50 years too, and I've seen all sorts of drivers, Eamonn. And, you know, I also owned a Ford Capri many moons ago. Yes, I'm sorry about that, Isabel. From my point of view, I'm sorry, I'm going to bring this back to a serious point. It's dangerous drivers that need to be highlighted. That's so important. And I think education at a young age, we know there's boy races, but there's also girl races. There's all sorts of things going on. I know what you're looking, and I understand what you're saying. These stats, I don't think are totally believable, because I've got other stats to say it's much closer in terms of who's responsible.
Can I sound the sensible klaxon and just say, in the bid to get the dangerous drivers off the road, why don't we, and I think this is the case, increase insurance for particularly high-risk categories like young male drivers, and therefore it does inevitably reduce the numbers on the road, doesn't it?
Well, that is what's happening. There's already higher premiums for people. My daughter is 31 years of age, and now she's over that magic 30 age. For some reason, that seems to be a threshold level. She drives an HGV 40-ton truck.
Does she?
So she knows. Yes, she does, and she knows about driving big time. But before she was 30, she paid something like 300-400% more than she is now paying. Those are the sort of things. So it's happening that way. But I think it comes down to education at an early age, right back at school. And I think there should be some young driver lessons going on right at school level.
But I think also it's the way men and women view their cars. I mean, when we have a conversation, you just say, well, I can't get worked up about cars.
Well, I just had an email from someone saying, Isabel, you don't like Ferraris? The world's gone mad.
Yeah.
I'm not fast. I'm not fast. I know, don't hate me. You know?
And Julie, you obviously, I mean, you have a 1 Series BMW, which is a very pleasant but small, unpretentious sort of car.
Yes.
So obviously it's not an ego thing with you.
No, not at all. I don't think driving should be an ego thing. And while I can see our other guests' opinions here, and I'm, not going to shout him down, I think these particular statistics speak for themselves. We're saying let's sort out dangerous drivers. Well, according to this research, the dangerous drivers are men.
Well,
they're not women.
Julie, and this has been pointed out by a viewer. I can't see their name, but they've said the reason is men do a lot more miles than women, so obviously they have more accidents.
That was factored into this survey, apparently. That was factored in, and they allowed for that, and even allowing for extra mileage, according to this study, women still came out the safer drivers. I mean, even take mobile phones, for example. There would be a 51% reduction in speeding and a 71% reduction in mobile phone at the wheel offences if only women drove. I mean, all these hideous, terrible accidents are happening, and they are caused in the main by men.
Yeah, and the point I was trying to make earlier about having an ego associated with your car, I would put it, Howard, that Julie will not be a person who will take the baffles out of her exhaust and have a roar. I mean, this idea of young men who drive past me with the most hideous noise, if I was a traffic cop, I would apprehend them straight away. But there is this thing where the car is a living, breathing entity. It's got to be like a raging bull or something like that. I think that part of the problem can be the way men are given cars, or how they have to treat cars, or if they give cars a name or whatever. I think men and women often see a car in a different way.
You're absolutely right, and I agree with virtually all what you're saying. The macho instinct for a man to get in behind a car, but we all change our attitude when we get behind that steering wheel. I've been, my wife, bless her, I said she hasn't had an accident, but when she drives and someone gets in her way, the expletives that come out of her mouth, actually, it's not something she would do down the local supermarket if there's a problem that she bumps into someone. The thing is, what we need to do, and I'm sorry I keep repeating this, it's all about education. And I agree, men are the more dangerous drivers. I'm not arguing with that. I'm making the point that we should have more police on the road monitoring all these dangerous things. There's dangerous cyclists, there's dangerous motorbikers, there's dangerous all sorts of people. The thing is, should we talk about dangerous driving, not talking about gender? That's my point.
Okay, so very good, guys. The road is there for us all to share, no matter what we're riding or driving or whatever. Julie Cook and Howard Cox, thank you both very much indeed. Very, very interesting. Howard, you said you had a Capri. Would you pay $250,000 for 2 of them? You see this auction next week from the professionals, 2 Capris.
Well, I've never seen $250,000 in my bloody life. So simply, Eamonn, it just brings back a lot of nostalgia. And there wasn't much room in the back seat either.
Yeah, no, absolutely, mate. Thank you very much indeed. Appreciate it. Thank you.
And pictures are still coming in. Graham and Romsey's just sent a picture of his parents, Capri, and we're looking at them all. And actually, the inbox also has gone crazy on that male versus female debate. I mean, if we ban the men from the road, who's going to fix my sink? Who's going to do all the really tough jobs? Who's going to mend the roof, you know?
My father used to drive a van and it had a name. He would call it Shirley.
That's weird.
Shirley, yeah, so it had a name.
Yeah.
So we would call Shirley OK
Cannot
today.
be serious. Yeah. Was this the magic carpet van?
That was the magic
Shirley,
carpet van.
the magic carpet
It was called
van.
Shirley. So very interesting. But then you see, there is this thing, and I know you're a bit weird like my wife. My wife will make out that I'm a bad driver, even though I have got no impediments on my licence of any description marks or anything like that.
Because you're never allowed to drive.
But yes, because I'm not allowed to drive when she is in the vehicle.
Good decision.
So, like you, and I put it that it's not to do with my driving capabilities or Liam's driving capabilities. It's to do with your inadequacies and your nervousness. Exactly.
Yeah.
To do with your nervousness.
I send my husband mad. Like this the whole time, and he says he's going to crash because of me doing that. But I think I see the accident about 3 seconds before he does. Every time we're on the motorway, he slams on the brakes at the last minute. I'm like, I saw that 3 seconds ago. I wouldn't scream if he just reacted more quickly.
That's exactly my wife.
Yeah, well, I told you before, Ruth and I are on the same level.
It's weird. It's weird. Anyway.
Anywho.
Guys, so appreciate you sharing your car pictures. Thank you very much indeed. I wish I had bought a Capri. I think I might still go and buy a
Yeah,
Capri.
well, whilst you mull that over, we'll be back in just a moment talking papers. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, 8:45. We were just discussing AUKUS, and I should just highlight we'll be debating the AUKUS uprising, or isn't it? Is it an uprising? I don't know. At 9:15. The attack boats, and apparently it could be revenge. They speak in dialects. There's culture. It's my favourite interview of the morning. Stay about half an hour's time. Yeah.
Sean MacDonald talking that and more. And Emily Carver, both here with the newspapers. Schools are being taken over by organisations teaching anti-racism theories. Now, what do you mean by that one? This is the Mail.
Yes, so this is critical race theory, which includes the ideas that the law and our institution are inherently racist, and if you're white, you have white privilege. And that's what the headline's going with. Anger as pupils are tested about white privilege. So this organisation, Don't Divide Us, has investigated 49 of the bodies working in English schools who teach this stuff, and they're promoting critical race theory as fact. Now, this is an issue for a number of reasons, but legally it is an issue because the government made it the law that you're not allowed to teach contested ideologies as fact. So the idea of white privilege, that you're more privileged than someone of a different skin colour, is a contested ideology, and it shouldn't be allowed in schools according to the law. I don't think it's very helpful, really. Also, there are many schools in inner cities that barely have any white pupils anyway, so I'm not really sure, you know, how that goes down in very diverse schools. It's not very helpful.
It's just alarming kind of hearing about schools and, you know, perhaps parents not necessarily aware of what their children are being taught. And for me, as a parent of small kids in school, I always find that a bit more concerning. You know, what are they being taught, whether it relates to gender ideology, whether it relates to, you know, should they be feeling guilty because they were born white? I think there should be more conversations between parents, teachers, certainly as they're kind of acting in loco parentis when your kids are there.
Apparently, in some classrooms, pupils are taking part in tests to check their unconscious bias. So what if they score badly? The teacher will pull them aside and say, hang on a minute, I think you might be racist. But anyway, they link it also to the sex education and how, yes, a lot of parents aren't very happy because they can't see those materials that are being taught, and they might not like some of it.
OK. Why is a night bus important? And this is one in Glasgow we're talking about. The Guardian's reporting this one. The Glasgow night bus has been cancelled, Sean.
Yeah, it's a decision by a private company, First Bus. They announced on Monday they were withdrawing their weekend night bus service across what is Scotland's biggest city. From the end of July, they're saying it's no longer viable because of low passenger numbers and not making enough profit. I think it's going to have serious implications for a lot of people, either late-night workers. The late-night economy is a vital part of Glasgow's gross domestic product, if you want to call it that.
Well, obviously it's not being used, though, or they wouldn't cancel it.
That's been contested, so they're saying that it's not being used, but the way I see it is...
It should be a service rather than a business.
It should be a service. It shouldn't just be purely for profit. I understand that, you know, pounds and pence are always going to come into things, but if people are trying to either get home from work, and also this applies to people who work early in the morning who have to get to work, and low-income families, low-income households, if you can't be affording taxis. And by the way, trying to get a taxi in Glasgow, like a lot of cities, is nigh on impossible, because after COVID, so many people decided that they were either going to change career or they were going to stop doing that.
You can't get taxi drivers.
So you can't get a taxi.
Belfast has a huge shortage. But Belfast had got a get you home bus at night, a last bus, a night bus, and it had my face on it. It was called Get Home with Holmes.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
Wow.
For it.
What?
I hope they paid you for it.
No, they didn't know it was a public service that I had to do.
Get home. How did that make you feel? Get home with Holmes.
Well, that was. I'm thinking every drunk that got on that bus at night, you know, on a Friday or Saturday night, they would be what they would have to say. I think they would be more interested.
You were actually on the side of some taxis as well.
Taxis as well.
I mean, you are Mr. Belfast himself.
Everywhere. So listen, let's Emily talk about Thames Water. You see, I can't stand Thames Water and all that they stand for and all that they don't do and the money that they rake in and whatever it is. But basically, they're saying having a bigger garden means higher water bills. That sort of makes sense to me. That
lots of their shareholders will be suffering then, because they'll all have huge estates based on the dividends they've been raking.
What I'm saying, the more water you use, surely the more you'll be charged for.
No, it's more that you'll have to pay more for the water that you use as well as obviously for the quantity. So you'll be charged a higher rate. And it's only, if you have a bigger garden, they're only saying because you have a bigger garden, they're only saying that because that's an indicator of you being wealthier, being richer, which isn't always the case. You know, some elderly people have been sitting in the same house for God knows how long, and they happen to have a massive garden. Doesn't mean that they necessarily have.
Swimming pool. They hate a swimming pool.
Well, they hate a swimming pool. So if you have a bigger garden under this proposal, you would have to pay more for your water as well as obviously for the quantity.
So water butts the answer. Start catching rain. It's the only way. There's so much of it. You can't trust them to catch it.
Mine all goes recycled. It all goes in underground, and then the sprinklers put it on the flower beds, but it's all recycled water.
But they're obviously trying to make up for all the for money that they're not making enough. No, clearly.
For purpose.
Sorry, that was a fly.
Fruit fly infestation.
This morning. And they try and make out it's everyone else's fault except theirs.
Yeah.
And I look at the rain. I mean, look at the rainstorms we've had over the past couple of weeks. Are they catching it? No. Are they diverting it to where it should be? No. So
we need more reservoirs as well, don't we? And our pipes aren't any good. And it's all going.
Sean, let's talk about the BBC presenter and his identity. What's Jeremy Vine saying?
Jeremy Vine is basically asking him to reveal himself, to either put a stop to this or to kind of stop the other BBC presenters who are basically in the firing line. Everybody's obviously speculating online. There are names that are circulating. I spoke to one name that's on the list, and he's pretty angry about it, as you would imagine. Jeremy Vine's saying as well, if this person cares about the BBC, as you would imagine that they probably do, being a long-term employer, then they should come out and say, yeah, it's me, because otherwise it's just going to be this storm, and it is becoming. So actually,
well, they obviously care more about themselves.
Yeah, I know. But you see,
anyone would.
Hold on. So Sarah Vine as well is saying that innocent names are being dragged through the mud for sport. It is becoming a real mess, and it is of this person's doing. I would have to echo that and say I agree that they should come out and take ownership of it. I think if there was a high degree of innocence, you would come out swinging, wouldn't you? So I think,
absolutely.
I think silence tells a lot of its own story.
But there's probably lots of legal reasons for staying silent.
Yeah.
Sean and Emily, we have to say goodbye to you. It's been a pleasure. We'll see you again soon, I'm sure. Thank you both very much.
You going home to water your garden?
I might do.
Your massive
my geraniums.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Let's see if
you need to water your garden or not.
Yeah, the weather will do it for you. Here's Greg Dewhurst.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GBNews.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. The day ahead is a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Some of these will be heavy at times and temperatures near average for the time of year. To the best of the sunshine first thing this morning across southeast England, but showers quickly spreading to all areas as we move through the day. Some of the showers could be heavy at times, the risk of some hail and thunder, particularly across northern England into Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland as well. There will be some parts that stay dry all day, but I expect most places will catch a shower. Feeling quite cool where we have a keen breeze around the coast, temperatures in the high teens to low 20s, perhaps 23 or 24 as a maximum temperature towards the far southeast. Through into the evening time, further showers across many areas, though they tend to become more well scattered as we head into the early hours, allowing for clearer spells to develop. But just notice there will be still some showers that carry on through the night. In terms of temperatures, generally a little lower than they have been, 13 or 14 to start Thursday morning. So a bright start for many, but scattered showers from the word go. Some of them will be heavy at times, and through the day, a mixture of sunny spells and showers. Showers hopefully less frequent, less heavy compared to the last few days, but some of them could be on the sharp side at times. Quite a bit of Wales, the Midlands could stay dry all day. Showers generally further north and further south across the UK. In the best of the sunshine, temperatures again up into the low 20s, a little cooler around the coasts.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GBNews.
Coming up, we'll have more for you on the BBC presenter scandal as a trio of new allegations have come to light.
the 12th, a day to celebrate history, community and family here in Northern Ireland. Join me, Arlene Foster.
And me, Dougie Beattie, as we bring you live coverage of the July 12th celebrations from the beautiful city of Belfast.
And right across the United Kingdom. It's all happening here on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New allegations in the BBC presenter scandal with claims of abusive messages and possible lockdown rule breaking.
Hello there, very good morning to you. The time is just approaching 9 o'clock on this Wednesday, July the 12th.
This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel. Here's what's leading the news this morning.
The suspended BBC presenter is facing a series of new revelations as it's alleged he sent abusive messages to someone on a dating app and broke COVID restrictions to meet with a young person. Our home editor Mark White will bring you the latest.
Well, the BBC star Jeremy Vine is piling the pressure on this unnamed presenter, saying it might be time for them to come forward and speak publicly. Jeremy Vine saying this place is on its knees.
In other news, Volodymyr Zelensky said it's absurd that NATO won't set a time frame for Ukraine joining the group ahead of a meeting with President Joe Biden today. G7 leaders will today announce a long-term security deal for the country.
Mortgage payers grappling with the most expensive loans in 15 years should prepare for even higher borrowing costs, according to the International Monetary Fund.
Ukrainian tennis star Alina Svitolina has said that her experience of war made her stronger as she celebrated one of the biggest wins of her career against the world #1 Iga Swiatek.
And will you need your umbrella today? The forecast coming your way very shortly.
Good morning. Heavy showers in the forecast once again today. Find out exactly where they'll be in the forecast later on with me.
Our top story this morning, the unnamed BBC presenter is facing a trio of new allegations, with The Sun reporting the host broke lockdown rules to meet a 23-year-old at a time when it was illegal to mix with people outside of your household.
The newspaper also carries claims that the suspended presenter sent messages to a 17-year-old that included heart emojis and kisses, which was described as creepy.
And it follows further allegations from the BBC that the unnamed host sent possibly abusive messages to a young person on a dating app after they suggested they would name him publicly.
Right, here's the view of a former BBC News producer who told us that the broadcaster's complaints procedure isn't up to scratch.
Depends ultimately on whether what's being alleged is true, and as we all know, we don't know whether it is true or not yet. So that has to be the case. But absolutely, in the frame here is the BBC's complaints procedure, which is not good enough, and they need to recognise that something. They need to take steps now which recognise the full urgency of this situation.
OK, let's now go to Broadcasting House, London headquarters for the BBC. Mark White is there. Mark, you were talking about Jeremy Vine saying this place, the place behind you there, is on its knees. Is that an accurate description, or why should that be?
Well, you know, I think certainly from people I've spoken to inside the BBC, there is certainly a great deal of anger and a feeling that the corporation is being absolutely dragged through the mud here. There are many within the newsroom here that would like this individual to come forward just to speak publicly, to take some of the pressure off those who are still suffering vitriol on social media because this person has not been named publicly because of these privacy laws that we've mentioned for days now that prevent us from really saying too much about this case for fear of either identifying the presenter or the individuals at the centre of the allegations. It is an absolute minefield that we're wading through. And add to this the difficult situation that the BBC finds itself in at the moment, where there are now a raft of allegations involving now 4 separate people that the BBC can't investigate because they've been told to suspend those investigations because the Metropolitan Police is scoping out whether or not that first allegation that was made to the BBC on the 18th of May may have been or may have involved some sort of criminality. It's clearly not clear cuts in that sense, as the Metropolitan Police is still trying to decide whether to launch a criminal investigation. But until it does that, the BBC can't do anything further with the other allegations. And it may be that, you know, on an individual level, these allegations might not amount to criminality, with perhaps the exception of breaking of COVID rules, if they can actually confirmed that that happened. However, it may point to a pattern of behaviour that perhaps is seen as very inappropriate for a presenter of their status. I say it is a big old mess. The BBC can't go forward until the Metropolitan Police decide if they're going to go forward, and as yet Scotland Yard are just saying they continue to scope out whether or not to launch an investigation.
OK, Mark White with that. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks for your comments on this, Sharon, saying if this person wasn't famous, this wouldn't be news. I'd like also to complain about people who are abusive on dating apps.
I'm sure that's true, Sharon. Paul says either the presenter should out himself or one of the many people who know who he is should. Of course, that's illegal for them to do that, so they can't. Martin, can we please have less about the BBC scandal? We're sick and tired of hearing about degenerates working within this horrible organisation. That just speaks to the general kind of damage this is doing to the brand for the BBC.
But you see, it's like Sharon says, if this person wasn't famous, would this even be news? So if we were all working in a supermarket and this was a manager there, whether it's wrong or not, would it be talked about? No.
It's the whole Philip Schofield thing. I mean, he got pushed out, didn't he, because of what was deemed an inappropriate age gap. It was what he described as not illegal but ill-advised. And, you know, we don't know the legalities of it, but, you know, does the age gap possibly create more questions? There's so much yet to know and reveal and understand, and, you know, which bit of it really is the worst. There's so many bits to pin it all on. Let us know your views, gbviews@gbnews.com, or you can tweet us @gbnews.
West Lindsey Council in Lincolnshire is preparing to return to the High Court in an ongoing effort to prevent 2,000 asylum seekers from being housed at RAF Scampton, known previously for being the home of the Dam Busters. And this is something which I have to say enrages you as viewers and listeners.
And the hearing will determine whether or not the case can proceed to a full judicial review, potentially halting the plans. Our East Midlands reporter, Will Hollis, has more.
For months now, no aircraft has flown in or out of RAF Scampton. But soon, hundreds of asylum seekers could start landing here. Residents like Jason live on the camp's edge. He says government proposals sideline the people living here.
It feels like we don't matter. Like nothing that we've got to say matters at all. Realistically, although they say temporary, I would guess many, many years. We would be the community that essentially picks up the pieces once they've gone.
The Home Office risks being overwhelmed by the backlog of asylum claims. In March, it announced a plan to build temporary accommodation at old military bases to accommodate thousands of migrants. One here at Scampton near Lincoln, another at Wethersfield in Essex. Local councils have hit back, claiming it's the wrong plan in the wrong place. They say that the Home Office is misusing planning legislation. Snap back to the present, West Lindsey and Braintree councils are getting their day in court. The Permissions hearing today will determine whether the bigger judicial review can happen. Roger is Scampton's councillor. He says a multi-million-pound deal to develop the old Dam Busters RAF base into a heritage attraction is at risk.
It's not about the asylum seekers. Everybody focuses on that to an extent. Not about the asylum seekers. It's about people's jobs, future jobs, the regeneration of everything. It's about whether we have a future ourselves as an estate or we don't have a future, which has happened at other bases. If I wasn't confident, I'd be depressed. You know, I don't want to be depressed.
In a statement, the Home Office said, delivering accommodation on surplus military sites will end the use of expensive hotels to house those arriving in small boats. We continue to work closely with the local authorities to address the local community's concerns.
Nobody's spoken to us about it. They're from the Home Office. No one. And as I said, the only response I've seen from the Home Office is to confirm that they will not speak to us face to face.
The swelling pressure on Britain's asylum system is spilling out across the country. Despite intentions, it's unknown if it will wash through here. Will Hollis, GB News, Scampton.
And your views very welcome. GB views at gbnews.com. And just to say, coming up in a few minutes' time, we'll be talking about orca whales.
Love this story.
They're also called killer whales, which is not, because they're not killer whales.
Well, they are. They kill seals.
You could say a seal's a killer seal. You know, I mean, I'm saying...
I know, but other seals, they just eat, like, plankton, and they just, you know, filter stuff on the surface, and they're huge, colossal things, but they just eat little tiny things. And then you've got the killer whales that come in and take baby seals and play with them, and they work in a team, and they circle them.
And a whale a killer whale, then you just antagonise everybody, thinks badly about it.
It's just trying to get its dinner.
Well, we're just trying to talk about how these intelligent creatures are now seemingly talking to each other, and for some reason, organised attacks on boats. So we're going to be talking about that very, very shortly. Let's give an update on the news situation.
A 15-year-old schoolboy is to appear in court today accused of attempted wounding and possession of a bladed article after a teacher was stabbed in Gloucestershire. Maths teacher Jamie Sansom suffered a wound in a corridor at Tewkesbury Academy at just after 9 a.m. on Monday.
Environmental regulators will be able to charge polluters unlimited penalties for causing damage. The Department of the Environment has confirmed this, the government saying the current limit of £250,000 will be scrapped following a consultation which has widespread public support.
A first edition copy of Tolkien's The Hobbit was sold for over £10,000 after being discovered by chance, lucky old them, in a Scottish charity shop. The rare copy of the famous book, which follows the adventures of Bilbo Baggins, was found by a manager at the Cancer Research UK Superstore in Dundee.
More Capris coming in. This is Paul's Capri. This is his regular car in that mustard colour there. Daytona yellow, actually, is the official colour. It's a 3000E from 1972. Nice body. Used mostly throughout the summer and owned for the majority of its life. Very, very nice.
Look, is that a garage or a showroom? I mean, that is one posh car house.
Looks good.
Looks well loved. Graham, my parents became the proud owners of Ford Capri back in '73. Mum had to pick it up in Dunstable. We lived in Luton, but she asked me to go with her as she was too nervous to drive it because of all that power. I've never been the cause of an accident either. Or is that just a man boasting about his prowess to impress? Well, I have to say, you've clearly been watching the whole programme and all the themes covered very well there, Graham. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah.
Linda has said, I had a Ford Capri in '61. Fabulous car. Everyone uses it to look at a wonderful shape, like poor man's sports car. Isabel, you must visit Capri one day. A beautiful island. You'll love it. It is on my to-do list, but I had no idea the island of Capri had anything to do with the car.
The car was named after the island.
Oh, why didn't you tell me that? Now I'm interested. Now we're cooking on gas.
Places.
I could get on board with that.
Like Winds, you know, Sierra or something like that.
No idea what you're talking about.
David from Suffolk, there's not a lot to admire about France at the moment, but as far as cars and danger goes, young drivers in France under 21, says David, cannot have a car above 1000cc. He said that would be a start for safer driving. And so many, Audrey talking about her Capri, Colin about his Capri, Sally, Sula,
Denise,
Sam,
Linda, Paul.
All Capris, all Capri owners are all
fans.
very happy memories of their Capri times. So I'm glad we talked about the Ford Capri today. Very nice.
Yes.
Very nice.
And still to come, still to be talked about on our programme is, as we've been discussing, the rise of these killer whales, whether you want to call them orcas, orca attacks. We're going to find out exactly what is going on beneath the surface.
Orca whales have increasingly been attacking ships and sailing vessels and boats, sinking 3 boats this year alone and damaging dozens more in recent years.
So we want to know what exactly is going on. Naturalist Nick Baker is here, joining us from the Cairngorms National Park, a place I absolutely love. Nick, good morning to you. Absolutely fascinating story. I mean, it's all over the internet with the hashtag Orcas Uprising, with this kind of, you know, visual image of sort of armies underneath the surface. You know, let's get real for a minute. What do we know for sure is happening?
Well, you said it yourself. Let's get real, shall we? The facts are we don't really know everything about this situation. I mean, it's we see it from our perspective, of course, but these animals are incredibly smart, and we don't really totally understand why they are doing it. However, I've seen lots of words being used like revenge and malice, and just these whales have got it in for us, basically, as a species. But I think these are very much human terms, and we're superimposing them upon these creatures. If they did want to get revenge on us humans, they would. There's plenty of better ways for them to do it, rather than damaging rudders and sinking ships. So, yeah, I don't think we totally understand what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, you say words that are used, but an orca is also known as a killer whale. That doesn't really help the perception, does it, Nick?
It doesn't, no. And this is the thing. I mean, I got corrected the other day by a cetacean expert. I used the word orca because I don't like the word killer whale for that reason. But apparently killer whale is the correct term. But and they are superb predators. I mean, they're amazing creatures. I mean, I've actually had the experience of kayaking with them. I've had them, you know, either side of my kayak, and they're incredibly powerful. I feel slightly more uncomfortable in the water with them than I would with a great white shark, you know. But they're kind of smart, you know. They are very smart, and this is the thing. It's like if they really were that smart and they were after revenge, there's many other ways they could get us humans. So what we've got here, I think, is a case of basic play behaviour. Anyone who's got a cat or a dog understands exactly what that is. It's fun. It appears to be fun, but what it's doing is honing skills to be used later on. And a ball of wool isn't a mouse, but that's what a cat will use. And it's the same thing with killer whales. I think they're probably playing. Bear in mind, these 2 particular groups of killer whale that are had the finger pointed at them are primarily made up of young, kind of adolescent animals. So they're at that stage where they're up to no good. They're sort of yobbish behaviour from a killer whale, basically, is what we see, I think.
But it's not inherited behaviour. What we are led to believe is that it's learned behaviour, and possibly it could be being passed down, being shared. And the fact that we've had these incidents of boats being bumped or even tipped over in different places, whether it's in the Shetlands or right down on the mouth of the Med, suggests that they are possibly, you know, there's this idea of culture, if you like, within the orca community.
That's exactly it. They do have a culture in the sense of we get these various social groups. We get these groups from various ecotypes that associate. They have their own particular ways of hunting, their own particular sort of ranges that they inhabit. And within that sort of framework, these animals, they're communicating. They're copying each other. They're following particular trends or fads, as it were. And we've seen this with killer whales before. We've had pods of killer whales that, for some reason, all started wearing salmon on their head. I know it sounds completely mad, but they would kill a salmon and then lift it up and wear it across their head. And they all started doing it. They all copied each other. I've seen them doing it with weed as well. They get a nice big pad of seaweed and wear it like a wig, you know. And it's play behaviour. Yeah. And these fads come and then they go as quick as they arrive. So it's one of those. We suspect that's what's happening here. You know, one adult female, a matriarch just has to do it a couple of times, and then the others follow along. And if they're enjoying it, they keep doing it. But, who knows how this is going to play out?
Yeah, I believe because they're clever, they're quite sensory, and they also have been seen rubbing themselves on rocks and things near Canada. And there was one school of thought that the hull of boats, the fiberglass, could feel like rubbing themselves on a rock, and it could just be a pleasing thing to them.
I mean, who doesn't want to have a good back scrub with a rudder? I mean, that seems to be what's happening. It could well be the case. I mean, and also, you know, just like us, they get itchy skin, that they shed skin as well. So they may well be. There might be an element of that involved. We just don't really know the full details, and it's going to be really interesting, certainly from a cetacean behaviour point of view, how this sort of plays out is going to be fascinating. But obviously, I mean, you know, it's not good news for those boat owners, and nobody other than in captivity, nobody's been actually been killed by a killer whale. So it's just an unfortunate thing if you're a boat owner that a killer whale's taken a shine to, really. And my only worry is that this gets blown out of proportion and killer whales then become an enemy, and then we start trying to drive the whales off and interfere with their behaviour, because these are particularly they're keystone species in the ocean. These are top end predators, and it would be an awful shame.
Well, Nick, thanks for that. Thanks for the whole education and description of them. Nick Baker is a naturalist, and he's in the Cairngorms National Park there.
And I might think twice about kayaking with them now they've got this learnt behaviour. Not sure I'd be too quick to kayak in amongst the killer whales.
Yeah. Coming up on the programme, we will bring you the 12th of July celebrations live from Belfast. But
first of all, here's your forecast.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. The day ahead is a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Some of these will be heavy at times and temperatures near average for the time of year. To the best of the sunshine first thing this morning across southeast England, but showers quickly spreading to all areas as we move through the day. Some of the showers could be heavy at times, the risk of some hail and thunder, particularly across northern England into Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland as well. There will be some parts that stay dry all day, but I expect most places will catch a shower. Feeling quite cool where we have a keen breeze around the coast, temperatures in the high teens to low 20s, perhaps 23 or 24 as a maximum temperature towards the far southeast. Through into the evening time, further showers across many areas, though they tend to become more well scattered as we head into the early hours, allowing for clearer spells to develop. But just notice there will be still some showers that carry on through the night. In terms of temperatures, generally a little lower than they have been, 13 or 14 to start Thursday morning. So bright start for many, but scattered showers from the word go. Some of them will be heavy at times, and through the day, a mixture of sunny spells and showers. Showers hopefully less frequent, less heavy compared to the last few days, but some of them could be on the sharp side at times. Quite a bit of Wales, the Midlands could stay dry all day. Showers generally further north and further south across the UK. In the best of the sunshine, temperatures again up into the low 20s, a little cooler around the coasts.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.